This is Gooey Louie, and it's a disgustingly good time. Today we're going to be comparing the 1995 Pressman edition of Gooey Louie to the 2023 Goliath edition of Gooey Louie. Let's see what's changed over the course of 30 years. To start, let's have a look at box art. When we're looking at the Pressman edition, we have this bright, robust box art. I love this. This just screams 90s. When we flip it over, we've got some pretty traditional board game fare. We've got some young kids playing the game, having a good time. We've got a few close-up pictures of the playset itself to show how it operates. Nothing really to write home about, but just brilliant, bright colors. Absolutely love this. This screams. Now, another thing that I like about this box is it's a classic flip-top game box, which means that all of the small parts will stay safely stored inside. I have a very soft spot for games that are designed with storage in mind, and I love the fact that it comes with a fantastic carton. So, points to the 1995 Pressman edition. Moving over to the 2023 edition, we've got a nice, robust, bright green cover art, this cartoony little Louie here, but one thing I think everybody notices right out of the gate is how much smaller the box is, and that does take away from its visual impact with that lack of super bright colors. This one seems a little bit more plain by comparison, but I love the cartoon image of Louie on front. I still think it's very eye-catching. I like the choice of the purple for the titling there. And again, when we flip it over, very standard board game fare. We've got a couple kids having a good time playing the game. Some close-up shots of the playset. Nothing to write home about. And the main event, storage. It's a flip-top box. Now, I'm not going to complain about not having enough space to fit such a small playset, but what I will say is it's almost too much space. So I myself held on to this little void fill, this little piece of cardboard that came with the game. Louie's neck actually fits in this little divot here so that when you pack him back up into the game box, it keeps the playset from bouncing around inside and prevents possible damage and wear and tear just from storing your game. So, though I'm not a fan of the flip-top boxes, if you keep the void fill, this still does a serviceable enough job. I recommend with either version, anytime I have small parts like these, like the Gooeys, I would get like a little Ziploc bag to keep those clean. So if we're comparing the boxes, this one just screams 90s. The 1995 Pressman box really has me with its fold-over clamshell design so that it can keep all the parts safe. So right away, I'm kind of leaning to the 95, but maybe I'm biased. Moving to the actual playset itself, the 1995 Gooey Louie playset, it's got a very nice presence on the table. It's a decent size. You have plenty of clearance to get to his nose. Nice 3D design. It's a mirror image of Louie on both sides. When you're working as far as the mechanical action, you pop open this door here, and this is where you place the Gooeys for gameplay. There's a small trigger, and you'll see a black rubber band by my finger here. You affix a rubber band to one of the Gooeys that you load in here and tie it off to this trigger. That's the unlucky Gooey that ends the game. If a player pulls that Gooey, it triggers Louie's brain to pop out, and the game is over. Now, there are two different rule sets that you can play with the 1995 edition. The quick play rule set is when a player triggers the brain to pop out, that player loses. The remaining players take all of the Gooeys that they plucked out of Louie's nose, and they line them up end to end. The player with the longest Gooey wins the game. If you'd like to play the long form rules, the player who causes the brain to trip, they're out of the game and eliminated. The remaining players restuff Gooey's nose with Gooeys and continue to play until there's only one player left who has not triggered the brain to pop out of Louie's head. Very simple gameplay mechanic that you can either play for just a couple minutes or drag out amongst several players. So again, lots of fun, not overly complicated. When we get into the playset for the 2023 edition, right away we notice it's quite a bit smaller than the 1995 edition. However, this has, this one has a lot more 3D modeling. This is a much cartoonier rendition of Louie. He's got a big smile. He's got a big swollen nose. He's got two gooey nostrils, very big to see, these huge bulging eyes. So now Gooey Louie here, when we talk about the mechanics, he has a little door in the front of his nose where the gooeys are loaded. Instead of using a rubber band to affix an unlucky gooey to the trigger mechanism that trips his brain launching, all of the gooeys in the modern playset have these little loops in the cast that they're molded into. So you mold from. I don't, terrible grammar. Uh, but you'll select an unlucky gooey and loop it around the trigger mechanism in his nose. And that's what begins the whole roulette game of finding the unlucky one. Now, in the instance of the 2023 edition, not only does Louie's brain pop out, but his eyeballs pop off. You saw one of them come off accidentally earlier. They're not spring-loaded, so they just sort of fall off. But when we get into the picking experience here, we got 2 nostrils. And, that's something we need to look at compared to the 95 years. The 95 has 1. Oh, look at that. You get this texture to the gooeys. Yeah, where they stick to each other and they become a little bit tougher to pull out. So you got that little friction where they're all, oh, and there we go. I like that this one squeaks. I love that his brain squeaks when it pops out of the 2023 edition, and that's what I was really hoping to get. So you've got relatively easy access to the gooeys with his 2 nostrils, albeit what I noticed with this playset is he's very close to the table surface. So trying to get my hands in there, if I was a little kid, it'd be easier. And I mean, yes, this game is geared towards a younger audience, but parents want to play games with their kids too, hopefully. And it should be accessible. So now that we have access to the unlucky gooey, sorry, I love that squeak. Now the rules have changed in the 2023 edition by comparison to the 1995 edition. Instead of just passing around Gooey Louie and pulling out a gooey, well, we've overcomplicated things. I'm willing to bet that you were looking at the table, seeing this die, and thinking, what in the Wizards of the Coast is that? And my friend, this is a 6-sided die that we have added to Gooey Louie because, hey, I guess just picking random gooeys and hoping that yours was the winner wasn't good enough. Now, this bothered me even more because this 6-sided die did not come pre-printed. I actually had to affix these stickers on it myself. And I don't know if there's a word in the English language for how annoyed I am. And thankfully, I have a nice, robust German audience. And meine Freunde, if you can tell me what the German word is for the disdain one feels for manually applying stickers and decals to a blank 6-sided die, please put it in the comments below. I want to keep that in my back pocket for future reference. So, Dankeschön. Thank you for that. Anyway, I had to apply the stickers to this die, which annoyed me to no end. And the stickers include a 1, which instructs you to pluck 1 gooey out of Louie's nose, a 2, which instructs you to pluck 2, an X, which tells you to skip a turn, and a hand, which tells you to steal a gooey from your friend. So not only have we overcomplicated the game, we've added theft. As the church lady would say, isn't that special? I don't see why we need to start stealing boogers from our friends, but hey, if that's the kind of thing we want to promote in this day and age with our board games, we'll go right ahead. So I will deduct some points for the overcomplication to the rules in the 2023 Gooey Louie. Let's get back to this. We want to talk about the picking experience though, because that's where the vintage version really shines. So we talked about 2 nostrils on the 2023 edition. The 1995 edition has 1, and it's small. You have like a 1-inch nostril, maybe 3/4 inch, which means when you have the playset on the table, yeah, you really have to get your finger in there. And the texture of the gooeys, I mean, it takes a little bit of you gotta kind of, you see how this is, there we go. Oh, yeah. 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 You see how that was better? That was just a much more robust picking experience. I have to say that overall, if we're going to talk about how it feels to get knuckle deep into one of these Gooey Louie sets and really root around in there and get a feel for what you can pull out of Gooey Louie's nose. The 1995 Pressman edition, I mean, they had the modeling of the Gooeys great. You have 3 different lengths, which each individually brings its own flavor to the picking experience. You get one of these long ones that kind of wraps around some of the Gooeys and makes for like a nice firm pull, or you get one of these short ones that gives you a robust, crisp pluck. And all of them have this fantastic jiggle. When we compare this to the 20, I mean, there's no contest. There's no contest. Clearly, the superior Gooey rests with the 1995 Gooey Louie. That's not to say that these don't have a nice feel. The 2023 Gooeys, they have a nice feel. They're a little shinier. They have a bit of a sticky feel. But again, they're so much smaller, and you would credit that to fitting into the small model. But then again, when you add the second nostril, and these nostrils are so generously sized, it's much easier, even with the maquette on the table, to just reach in there, get a good hook. And yeah, I mean, this one has a really good, that is a nice Gooey slide. That was a good pull. That was a good Gooey pull. So the 2023 edition does have the opportunity for good Gooey pulls, and again, crisp plucks that you might get with one of the shorter Gooeys in the 1995. There is enjoyment to be had in the 2023 edition. But I got to say, by shrinking the maquette down, by shrinking the Gooeys down, by adding the die, by adding the extra nostril, they've significantly diminished the picking experience that one gets from the classic version here. Now, finally, let's have a look at the rule books. First and foremost, the rules on the Pressman edition, it's a single-sided print. This is fantastic. They knew exactly how simple this game was. And actually, what I love is there's an order form on the bottom where you can get replacement Gooeys, which brings up one of my favorite points about the 1995 edition is if somebody ever ordered a replacement Gooey, that means that there is somebody out there who has a Gooey Louie set that they've added an expansion pack to. And that warms my heart. Going to the 2023 edition, we have a very nice, colorful, robust, sealed paper print. I do like when they do these full color prints on nice glossy paper. They hold up very well in storage. It's very simple. It's just a one-time fold out. Tells you how to place your stickers on your die. Tells you how to place your own stickers on your die. Can't do that for you. They got to have you do that. So that's, but again, they have the instructions for the game. The updated instructions are very simple. They've just added die to the game. Overall quality of print, I'm going to go ahead and say 2023 does win. Higher quality paper, nice graphic design. This will arguably hold up better. Both of these, the original 95 and the 2023, when originally purchased, were haphazardly just kind of thrown into the box by their respective manufacturers. So presentation-wise, neither one of them is going to edge out. So when it comes right down to it, if we're going to be comparing the box art, the gameplay, the overall picking experience, as it were, I'm going to go ahead and side with the 1995 Pressman edition of Gooey Louie. So if you're looking to get yourself a copy of Gooey Louie, I highly recommend it. The 2023 is more than playable, and honestly, I think this is more suited for a much younger audience. I think you can use the original version of Gooey Louie with a much older audience, and everybody will have a much better time. It requires a little bit more dexterity, a little bit more skill, and as you could see, it was even funny to watch me try to pick that out. I mean, honestly, it's impossible to watch somebody play this game and not smile. So Gooey Louie, do you love it? Have you played it? What are your thoughts? Comment below and let me know. This is Buckaroo. It was originally designed by Julius Cooper and produced by Ideal in 1970. Today we're going to compare an original edition of the game to the 2004 Milton Bradley edition. Let's see what's changed and what stayed the same over the course of about 35 years. To start, let's have a look at the game boxes. First off, the 1970 box. This is extremely attractive. I love how this looks like the old hand-painted posters for the spaghetti westerns that were common during the era that this was produced. There's no photo of the game itself, but I think actually this depiction is close enough to the model that it doesn't feel at all misleading. I like the blurb on here. Put on a shovel, try a pick. If it's too heavy, the mule will kick. That's lots of fun there. Now, you flip it over, there's nothing really to write home about. It is a two-piece box with ample room for storage, so I'm a big fan of that. This is a neat detail that I thought was great. When you bought this in 1970, it would come packaged with the model of Roo the mule kicking at the tool shed when you unbox this. So this is just great fit and finish for something from 1970, especially a toy like this. I just absolutely love how they did that. So points to Ideal for such a cool package. Now, another neat thing about this box is this has the original price tag. I thought that was kind of interesting. This sold for $3.79 back in 1970. So if I'm not mistaken, when we adjust for inflation, we're going to be sitting somewhere around, 10, 15 bucks in today's cash. And, that's actually a pretty nice value for a game like this. So pretty cool. Moving on to the 2004 Milton Bradley edition. Look at this box art. This is so bright and colorful, very cheery, very cartoony. The saddle stacking game with a moody mule. Ooh, nice call out there. I like the lettering for Buckaroo. A little bit of blurb with some kids playing the game. When we flip it over, it's that same photo, just larger. A description of the game, a parts list. Now, here's something that you'll find interesting in this era is the dual branding of Hasbro and Milton Bradley on the box. Now, Hasbro purchased Parker Brothers and Milton Bradley in the early 90s and eventually brought them into the fold under the name Hasbro Gaming. But in the interim, for a number of years, they continued to publish games under both labels. So this is a prime example here. 2004, they were still producing Buckaroo under the Milton Bradley name, even though it was still branded Hasbro on the box because they were owned by Hasbro. So neat little trivia there. We open this bad boy up. It is a two-piece box with ample room for storage. However, I'll give it, with how much bigger the 2004 model is, this could stand to be a little bit deeper, like a 1/4 inch deeper, would make everything fit just a little bit more evenly. When you put it in here now, little parts of the plastic will press against the lid and back of the box. It feels very uneven. I'm not a fan. So it is enough storage room. I would like just a hair more. Common complaint with modern games. Interesting though, I did like how the bottom lid has art along the edges of the box and it's different on all four sides. Little cowboys and depictions of the mule kicking, Roo kicking. So I thought that was kind of nice. So I do think that the 2004 box is a very acceptable game box. I wish it had a little bit more space as far as how deep the box is, but other than that, nice. Moving on to the gameplay itself. So the 1970 Buckaroo. So how the game is played is players will first set Roo up to buck. That is, hold firmly down at the base, push his head back until he sets. Ooh, it's pretty loud. It's kind of scary, but I mean, it's a spring-loaded mechanism here. I was a little nervous when I first set him up that I was gonna break something when I got that loud crack, but that's just how he was built. Now, the first player will place the saddle on Roo's back, and this has a little peg in the center that lines up right here. I think you can see where this is going. So as players begin to add weight to the saddle, eventually the saddle will trigger and Roo will buck all of the gear off. So the player who causes Roo to buck is eliminated from the game. If they manage to stack all 12 pieces on Buckaroo or Roo before he bucks, the player who stacks the last piece wins. Now, if there's more than 2 players, the remaining players who are not eliminated will simply reset Roo and take turns stacking tools on until there's only one left. So again, I get to use one of my favorite gameplay phrases, there can be only one. I love that. I'm gonna do that anytime I get a chance. All right, so the 1970 edition, it's relatively lightweight, though I think it does the job. It's a little scary. You know, he's the ideal 1970 edition is the only one that's all white like this with a red mane, and it kind of scares me a bit. He came on a pale horse and his name was Death. It's a pretty scary looking model, but at the same time, it does the job. There are later versions of this game that were produced by Milton Bradley that used this exact same build, but they changed the color of plastic to brown. And I think stylistically that might have been a better choice, but this is still very eye-catching, very fun. One of the other things I noticed is the gameplay sensitivity. A lot of it is tied to how his hooves slide around on this plate. There's a little bit of a smooth spot on the plate here, and depending on how he lands when you set him, his feet will either kind of hold his back up, or in this instance, they'll be loose and sliding, and the trigger will be a lot more sensitive. I actually think that on this play here, I might only get to stack a couple things. I'm going to pick the very heaviest stuff. You can see how he's starting to drop his haunches a bit towards the trigger. Oh, we're close. Let's see. Oh, am I going to get it? Canteen. Oh, I didn't get that. I got two. Oh, and there he goes. So sometimes you can tell it's coming. Other times he stands quite firm, and it's tough to tell when he's going to go. As you can see when I'm trying to reset him, you have to be pretty gentle. He can have quite the hair trigger there when you're setting him up. So really cool. I know a lot of people who requested that I have a look at this game pointed out that the old version had a much more sensitive trigger than modern iterations, and I gotta say, it's very unpredictable, which adds to the fun of the gameplay. I also want to point out, when we look at the little pieces here, the detail on these pieces is great. I love the little TNT box. The hat looks really well beat up and actually has kind of a leathery texture on it, which is cool. In this instance, we've got a canteen and horseshoes and a pan, all the regular kind of cowboy gear, and every little bit of it looks just a bit beat up. It has just a little bit of extra detail, and I think that's awesome. It helps add to the overall design of the game. And when you look at the model too, I mean, he's got ribs modeled into him. His hooves are nice. He's shod, so I mean, he's a well taken care of owned mule. But I actually think that quite a bit of love went into the original design here for Buckaroo. So let's have a look at the 2004 playset. Now, the rules are going to be largely the same. However, there are a few changes. Obviously, we can see that, well, this is a much more substantial Buckaroo model, or Roo model. When you lift the saddle blanket, you'll see there's a small switch on his side where you can adjust the sensitivity from 3 to 1. Then what ends up happening is you release the blanket, which is obviously the trigger mechanism. Now, to set the 2004 edition, instead of pushing the head back, you push the tail down until he puts his feet down. The rules are unchanged from 1970. The first player will attach the saddle. Now, I want to point out there are some differences with the saddle here. You know, amongst all the parts from the 1970 edition, the only one that I found was commonly broken when I was trying to recondition this set was the saddle. It can be very difficult. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I believe the saddle for the mid-80s Milton Bradley edition is really, really close. So if you have a 1970 edition and you're looking to find spare parts, look at the early 80s Milton Bradley iterations of the game. And some of the parts are quite interchangeable. The biggest difference is the later iterations, Milton Bradley used the same mold but changed the plastic to brown. You'll see like colored tools. The original 1970 Ideal Edition, contrary to box art, actually only had the red tools. It was a little bit later in their production run that they started introducing different colored plastic. So if you're reconditioning an OG, you're going to want to try to find a red saddle. But these were commonly these little, posts here that you hang all the equipment from are very commonly broken. Now, the newer version for 2004, this is a much bigger, sturdier saddle, but the little spots where you hang the tools, it's very small by comparison, and they've added 2 more along the center. So we have these kind of, I wouldn't call them spikes, but nubs that you hang everything from. Now, he's also got 2 little holes on the model here where the posts sit in as opposed to 1. So it helps you line up front and back when you're setting Roo here. So when we set him up, there we go. We've got him on sensitivity setting 3, which should be the most sensitive. And again, the same rules apply. The first player puts on the saddle, and then remaining players stack on parts. Now, an interesting thing is, because of the adjustable difficulty, I've had varying degrees of luck getting this to be sensitive enough. Like, I'm actually glad that he went off the way that he did during the demonstration, because during playtesting, it was kind of hard to predict if he was going to go off at all. And I would say the first 3 times that I played this on settings 1 through 2, as we were working our way through it, it allowed me to stack all of the parts on Roo quite easily. The only difficulty actually being these little nubs that you're supposed to rest everything on. Now, according to the rules, you don't have to hook everything on the nubs. You simply have to get everything stacked onto his saddle. So that adds a little bit of Jenga to it, because stuff will start falling, or I should say reverse Jenga. Stuff will start kind of falling off and getting uneven. And I think realistically what we're looking at with this is the trigger mechanism is more likely to go off if something starts to slide and the player attempts to catch it. So it's not, I would say it's not quite as touchy as the 1970 edition. At no time during playtesting was I able to stack absolutely every tool on the 1970 edition. On the modern edition, on the lower settings like 1 and 2, it was very easy. We had to crank it to 3 to start seeing where the game became more of a challenge. So something to keep in mind here is this Buckaroo is a little bit more bomb-proof by comparison to the moody mule that you might be used to in the past. So that is nice. It's a bit more forgiving for younger players. I like how he's shod with these nice kind of gold yellow shoes here. I like the reset being on the tail as opposed to the head. And I will say, so far, it seems like when you go to reset him using the tail button and everything, he stays set. With the older Roo, it was a little bit more of a challenge, as you saw earlier, setting his head back. You had to kind of treat it like it was almost like setting a landmine or something. You just sort of back away slowly. Okay, it's time to begin. As far as the modeling, we've added a little froggy friend here for Roo. And, you know, I'm going to set him off so I can... One thing that I'm not a big fan of is when you lock his feet. So for storage, he comes off of this platform. You're supposed to push his feet into these slots, push down, and pull back to lock. There's a little bit of a barbed section there to the plastic that holds him to the base. And he kicks forward so much that it hardly holds him on. But I don't really think that that harms the gameplay. This will give us access to the base, though, to have a look. The base on the 70 edition is just textured like dirt with a little smooth patch where his hooves hit. This has a little bit more modeling. We've got tin can, footprints, an old loose shoe, a frog. He's really living in kind of a junkyard when I look at how much litter is just underfoot. I would hate to have to call a farrier over him standing on one of these broken cans and getting a piece of metal in there. So poor Roo in the modern Buckaroo, he lives in a junkyard next to a swamp, because I mean there's water here, there's a frog. Just very interesting choice of landscape is all I'm saying, and maybe I'm missing the forest for the trees. The actual model itself is very colorful. They have concealed the mechanism, so compared to the 1970 edition, where the mechanism is actually visible and accessible from underneath, this is all put together with Phillips head screwdrivers. It's a lot more chunky. I will say, if you're going to have kids playing it, that's a nice safety measure. You're not going to have little kids sticking their fingers up in the works and getting hurt or pinched in one of these springs, because the spring on the older edition is no joke. It's a pretty solid steel spring, as I'm sure the spring in this has to be in order to kick over such a heavy model. And that brings me to why I've chosen to look at the 2004 edition of Buckaroo as opposed to the current edition as produced by Hasbro. This is a very particular model because this was the edition that got pulled off the market. In 2006, a child was playing with this edition of Buckaroo and took an eye injury. The subsequent lawsuit forced Milton Bradley / Hasbro to pull this game in 2006, and it was later reintroduced in 2008, unchanged save for some new addendums in the rules to encourage people to stay a little bit further back so that they don't get hit with flying parts. But the media firestorm basically caused the game to be unavailable for about 2 years. Now, when the game was introduced, like I said, they used the exact same mold, the exact same mechanism. The current packaging is updated with Hasbro branding, and the cartoon is a little bit different, but largely the same. I thought it was kind of interesting to bring this one in, one, because it's exactly the same physically, and two, it was kind of unique when you're choosing between the two as to which one caused the injury. I wanted to see if perhaps this one had a particularly strong spring mechanism, or if there was anything in particular to write home about as to why this would have been considered the dangerous model. But as you can see, over the years, as the game had been redesigned, I actually think that it got safer and safer and safer. At this instance, even we're talking the tools that you stack on Roo, they're a little less detailed, but they're all much more well-rounded. Not that there's really any sharp edges on the 1970 edition, but I will say these were two-part molds, and so sometimes you get a little sharp edge on the seam where the mold comes apart, so like the edge of the shovel's a little bit sharp. You compare that to the modern shovel, you can hardly tell where the mold came apart. They kind of got that tolerance down there. There were some subtle differences also in the tools. Like for instance, the original 1970 edition has a TNT crate. The 2004 and the current edition now just change it out for an unmarked crate. However, I thought, well, are they eliminating the dynamite? Well, no, they added a TNT bundle of 3 sticks of TNT. So kind of strange choice there. They also eliminated the horseshoes and they added a lantern. I think we also got a bedroll. They eliminated the boot and the pick. And for some reason, the modern version has this piece. This is a gun belt and gun, but this has to be the lightest piece of all the tools. So I don't know if they added it in there as kind of like for a player who wants to cheese it and go, I'm going for the absolute lightest, but thematically, it doesn't seem to fit, and it's such a almost useless tool. I wish they would have added something else of closer weight to the other pieces to the playset, because the sensitivity on this model of Buckaroo is such that, especially if you have it on the lower settings, you really need that weight to set that off. Boy, that does kind of drive me nuts how he comes right out of that base there. But anyway, I think actually the gameplay between both of them being the same, the biggest thing boils down to safety and availability. If I were somebody looking for the nostalgia of the 1970 edition, you know, there's nothing wrong with these. They're very stable. They're very well put together. They can just be hard to track down in good condition. And I can understand why playing something like this, you would kind of feel like, you know, they don't make them like they used to. So kind of an interesting look there. I do want to point out, at this point in the show, I'm normally going to be looking at rule books. Unfortunately, this 2004 edition, though it does note on the box it should come with a rule set, did not have a rule set when I acquired it, and the rules are printed on the inside of the Buckaroo case. So I'm going to give all the points for that section straight up to the Buckaroo case for having a set of rules that cannot be lost so long as you keep everything together in the box. I'm going to assume that what we had in this is pretty standard fare for the era, so most likely a full color print on sealed paper, which those do tend to stand the test of time, but as proven right here, they can get lost easier when the instructions are printed separate. So win to the 1970. I'm going to go ahead and say that I actually think both editions are a lot of fun. I did have more fun with the vintage version. I'm not going to lie. I don't feel like the vintage version is the legendary status that a lot of my viewers like to put it at. I had a lot of people talking about how, boy, this sucker is going to launch game pieces across the room. It's going to make you jump 3 feet off the table. You're going to lose your mind when you play this original version. It's so dangerous. And actually playing it, I mean, it doesn't matter which version you're playing. If you're not expecting Roo to jump, or even if you are, like, even if you're just sitting here like me, haphazardly stacking them on, expecting them to jump, the trigger on this is fantastic. When he goes, and it's so lightweight that the clatter that it makes when all the parts fall, that really gets a rise out of you. So, I mean, I gotta say that this game probably plays just as well as it ever did, probably just as good as the day it came out of the box, save for the wear and tear. I'm also going to go ahead and say that clearly this 2004 edition has held up beautifully. It's Gorgeous art. The sculpt is amazing. I'm not going to take anything away from the artists on this one. I think this redesign, this modern design of Buckaroo, given their target audience, given the change in technology that we've had between 1970 and the 2004 era when this was made, they made all the right moves. I do understand where when you read reviews for the late model Buckaroos, people say, oh man, this is, you know, not sensitive enough. It hardly ever goes off. We're always able to stack everything on. I'm going to go ahead and say that even on level 3, if you're really concentrating and you're really trying, it is possible to get every tool stacked on this. And I know how some people who are real try hard on this might be disappointed by that. To be fair, the target market for a game like this is actually quite young. And I do think that they attempted to account for the lack of sensitivity with the saddle design. Oh, it's kind of odd. With the saddle design, in that having these pegs be much smaller when you're hanging things on, it becomes more of a game of actually trying to get it to stay on and actually trying to block other players from having spots to hang things on. And as you can see, I'm setting this game off just fine playing it in front of you, because a lot of it has to do more with how awkward it is to stack things on as opposed to just the weight of the 1970 edition. So that's important to keep in mind. Given the target audience, given who's playing it, I'm not disappointed by this edition of Buckaroo, and I don't think that many people would be. However, that being said, if it's an older audience, hey, guess what? Skill issue. You are simply going to have steadier hands than younger players, and this won't feel nearly as challenging. So this is much more of kind of a roulette, where based on the cumulative weight of all of the different tools, and some way more than others, it becomes a little bit more of a strategy game. This, it's not just weight, it has to do with space on the saddle, and a lot to do with just making people jump as things slip off and hitting it. So I think the designers had the right idea in trying to come up with a way to both make the game easy enough that a kid could win it if they tried hard enough, while at the same time requiring a certain amount of skill from older players. So it's, you know, not the greatest iteration as far as sensitivity and making you jump. Is it a fun game? Absolutely. Is the art great? Oh, yeah. He looks just like the front of the box. This is wonderful. Like if I was giving the gift to a kid, 100%, I would go with one of the newer versions of Buckaroo. So Buckaroo, hey, you've seen the breakdown, you've seen the tools, you've seen the game. What do you think about it? Do you prefer the original model, or do you think the new update has a lot to offer? Comment below and let me know. This is Don't Break the Ice. It's a classic game of skill originally produced by Schaper in 1968. Now today I have a 1970 edition from Schaper that I'm going to compare to the most recent version I could get a hold of. This is a 2016 edition from Hasbro. Now I purchased this right off the shelf here in 2025, and it looked to be the newest one. So this should be our best comparison of original to current. So let's have a look and see what changed in over 45 years in the game Don't Break the Ice. Let's get started with the box art, starting with this 1970 Schaper. This is awesome. First off, I want to point out that there's a carry handle and it has a lift-off top, but on the top end. So it's got ample room for storage, plenty of space for all the parts, but I really love this little carry handle. It's got a great representation of the game on front, and this is my clue that I am missing one of obviously what was 4 mallets that came with the game originally. I did actually get an extra cube, so they thought ahead and included an extra ice cube, so they were prepared for kids to lose parts. So again, points to Schaper here. But anyway, we can see the red mallet on display that I wish I had for this set. 2 kids enjoying the game, and I love the little tagline here. The game begins, the ice is thin, be careful or you may go in. Ooh. When we flip it over, here's something that I love. The rules. The rules are printed right on the back of the box, so you're not gonna lose anything. I mean, this is great. You can You can carry the game around. It's just having the lid on the top like this and everything, gravity is going to keep it shut. I mean, I know that sounds silly, but you can store it on end, slide it right into a shelf. All the parts are going to stay right there. This is great. I really like it. So this is a great game box. It's not one of those where the top lid just flips closed and that can pop open and spill out all of your parts. Everything is, and even the bottom is one of these little pop together pieces so it can hold the weight of everything. Very nice, very nice. So Schaper had some very functional packaging at this time. I got to give it to him there. Oh, and I almost overlooked here. I like this font on the top here, "Don't break the ice." Very nice, very recognizable there. So, and the color scheme too, the integration of red, white, and blue, along with yellow in Iceman and in the mallet. I mean, it's very bright and colorful, ties together nicely. Now let's move on to the 2016 Hasbro edition of Don't Break the Ice. Right away, we can see this box stands a little bit taller and appears to be, about the same width, but a little bit wider, So right away, it's very eye-catching with its size and display. I love this cartoon of Philip the Penguin right out front. The titling for Don't Break the Ice is great. I mean, I gotta say, when I'm stacking these boxes right against each other, this one's the one that looks more exciting and more inviting. So very nice upgrade. They've even got two little kids in front having a good time playing the game. When you flip it over, you have a larger image of the two kids having a good time playing Don't Break the Ice. A couple, standard fare for board games, some blurbs and little close-up pictures of the elements of the game. Now this one, the box flips open at the top. Not a huge fan, but I mean, the parts are big enough that you're not really going to lose them. It's just that these flip tops over time can start to wear out and they don't stay closed too well. So, but for a game with this large of pieces, I'm not too worried about storage with that. That being said, this box could stand to be a little bit deeper. When you remove the legs and you start putting everything in the box, it all fits fine, but I had to shake the box around a little bit to try to get everything to settle enough that I could close it. So it was a little bit frustrating and could use just, I would say, even just an extra ½ inch of depth would have helped all of the parts float around in the box a little bit easier. I'm not worried about anything breaking if the parts are floating around in the box, but more that everything can settle and it'll all fit correctly. So I will say it's adequate for the game. It'll hold everything nicely. The art is great. I prefer the original Schaper box for storage versus the Hasbro box for storage, but as far as visual appeal, I gotta say, they have a really nice package for the new Don't Break the Ice. So let's move on to the game itself, starting with this 1970 edition of Don't Break the Ice from Schaper. Right away, let's look at these mallets because we can see there's a huge difference between the modern and the original. These are actually just wooden dowel rods that are painted. I love it when I get wood elements like dice in my games, but this is next level. Now we actually have these little mallets here, and that weight and flexibility of the wood, I really do think adds something to the gameplay. Now, I have 3 of them here, and it's obvious from the photo in the front of the package, like I said before, clearly a red one is pictured, so I'm sure when this originally came out, you got 4 mallets, but they're all very neat, and you don't really need more than one to play the game, even with multiple people. It's nice to not have to hand them off, but come on, share once in a while, share. All right, let's move some of this off to the side. Now, right away, what we're going to see here with this edition of Don't Break the Ice, we have this blue platform here. I'm going to remove Iceman as carefully as I can. Unfortunately, the stool that he sits on this version that I got is a little beat up, so he doesn't sit on his own when I take him off of the ice. But we're going to do this for demonstration purposes so that you can see that the ice is a series of small, approximately 1 inch, 2 centimeter cubes that are fit in using these little fins here on the plastic frame to put pressure on them. And in the center is one larger piece, and that's where Iceman, as he's called, will sit. So he's ice fishing out on thin ice, hoping that you're not going to make him inevitably fall through. On this edition, the legs actually can be attached and detached quite easily. And though they fold so that they fold flat, I notice when you try to put them in the box, the legs are just a little bit too wide to fit in the box when they're attached to the board in either direction. So you do have to disassemble it, which got me kind of puzzling as to why they folded, until I realized that it is far easier to reset the board when you fold the legs in and you're pushing the smooth surfaces in, rather than taking the cubes and trying to push them in from the rear side of the board here. So there was some forethought to that design that had nothing to do with storage and everything to do with gameplay. Now moving on to Iceman. So Iceman is the fella who has faith that he's not going to fall through the ice and it's misplaced. He's like I said, he comes with a little stool that clips onto the larger ice cube in the center of the map. Now in this 1970 edition, Iceman was a two-piece plastic figurine, so we got his body and his little head here. I'm assuming that they just did that for artistic purposes so that there is some contrast there. He looks nice, and thankfully there's enough of his stool that when it clips in, he does sit nicely when I'm playing this game. So functional, and at some point I'll have to see if I can either source an original replacement or 3D print a replacement if none is available for that stool. Seems like a very small component to have to recreate for this, so I'm not very bothered. Now let's get to the gameplay itself. This is the fun part. So this game is for 2 or more players. There's really no limit. It's a skill game where you take turns trying to tap out one of these cubes of ice in hopes of not making Iceman fall through the ice, which of course then you lose the game. So we're gonna do a little demo here. Oh boy. Which one do I wanna? Let's do right in the corner. Let's. There we go. Now early on, it's really easy to remove ice chunks, and I was probably being a little bit more cautious than I need to be. You can really go in there and give her the business if you want to, but as you start removing blocks of ice, you really don't want to be too firm with these. And for instance, as you can see, oh, don't want Iceman falling here. As you can see, if I hit relatively firmly, more than one block can begin to dislodge. So that's why in my earlier shots there, I was just trying to lightly, gently tap it so that you don't knock them all over. And it's surprising how many of these blocks you can knock out, and it become and then you start getting loose pieces. You start getting parts that start shifting and floating, and it starts getting kind of nerve-wracking because some of them pound out easier than others as you're progressing the game. Now, I don't want too many of them piling up there, because if he falls, you know, and this is kind of interesting because is he going to hold with just the pressure from the corner? I don't know. Oh no! Oh, I hit Iceman! Iceman, forgive me. This is why I need to repair repair his stool for him. Oh, how horrible. He didn't make it. There we go. Oh, I have to attach his head. It looks fine, right? He looks fine. The head's on straight, right? It looks fine. He looks fine. He's a good-looking Iceman. Oh no, he fell again. So clearly I need to repair my Iceman, but you get the premise of the game. Players take turns knocking out increasingly difficult ice cubes, hoping to not be the one who makes Iceman fall into the frozen lake. Now, honestly, it's a very simple concept that really in practice is quite a bit of fun. So I do enjoy the game. However, I will say the subject matter of having a person fall through the ice, that's a little scary. And that's why I do like the modern version. They have replaced him with Philip the Penguin. Philip the Penguin. Oh, my friend Philip. I like Philip. The nice thing about Philip the Penguin is if he falls through the ice, nothing happens. He goes swimming, maybe even gets a bite to eat. Maybe he'll find a nice halibut under there. I love the new ice cubes on the 2016 edition. When we go right over into this, There's a whole lot of detail and these little cracks and greebling in the front that just add some extra personality. I also like the sculpting on the side of the board to make it look more like an iceberg, and the legs just pop right in. There's no retention clips or anything. They just fit nice and snugly, pressure fit. So this sits very stable, and we have our little mallets. Now these, it's interesting because they are a hair lighter than the wood ones, but roughly the same size, just plastic. I gotta say, we gotta see how the tapping experience goes. See, I feel like I'm not they are definitely it's funny how the tap gets louder and sharper as you get as you get closer to dislodging the cube. These definitely fit much tighter. I like that I can do that, and Philip the penguin doesn't fall over like Iceman, or Iceman's stool. Oh, he has a soft stool. There we go. Got another one. Let's see how many we can get. See how dramatic this is compared to the original. Now I do notice one thing is Philip overhangs his little ice cube quite a bit on some of these spots. Like, I enjoy the sculpt, don't get me wrong, the sculpt is amazing. He's really cute. It's very simple, but it's just a cute little penguin guy here. But just a little bit of him overhangs, so when I'm tapping there, I got to be careful that I'm not hitting him. And boy, yeah. Ooh. How tightly everything fits requires you to really, give it. It does require you to tap pretty firmly to get everything to come apart here. But I mean, this is a new set. So this is a new set versus an old set. So I'm sure that age and plastic fatigue have a lot to do with it. I mean, just trying to reset this one here. However, I will say there's no need for folding legs. This is pretty easy to just flip right over and pop these right back in. Now, again, one thing that I did notice is in the 2016 edition of Don't Break the Ice, look how easy that was to reset. I would have, well, let's have a look here. So the 2016 edition came with the exact amount of ice cubes I need. The Schaper edition from 1970 did come with one extra ice cube, like I said earlier. So they were really anticipating that kids might lose parts, and hey, good on them. I mean, they lost a mallet. So let's get these all put together here. And there's actually, this is a good thing to point out. I do notice that right here on the original design, you're missing one of the pressure fins. So on these outer lines, I guess, of cubes, these outer pillars of cubes, on the end of each one, you can kind of see it here, the little fin that holds pressure on it is shorter on the end of each one that's around the periphery of the ice patch. So that's fascinating. I wonder if that is to allow just the right amount of give, because what I will say is on this 1970 edition, the ice cubes fit in a little bit easier and playing the game feels a little bit riskier, I guess. The smoothness of these plastic cubes, I mean, really, when we get into it, the 2016 edition, they're smooth and nice. They're almost the same size, a little different greebling. I bet you could almost interchange these on the game board itself. So I will say, just judging from that, one thing that you can say is the modern one did not get shrunk down at all. And with the quality of plastic, I would say it's highly unfair to even visit the notion that this is a cheaper, lower quality version. I'm gonna assert right now, because I'll give it some of the games that I've reviewed from Hasbro lately, like the 2022 edition of Grape Escape, or the more recent 2021 edition of Candyland that I looked at. Not that it's more recent than 2022, just a more recent episode. Both of those, the games themselves had suffered a great decline in quality of craftsmanship. And this is a scenario where I can say Hasbro, their version of Don't Break the Ice, right now as I stack it up against 1970 edition, which should be, that's within 2 years of the original release of the game. So this is a really excellent representation of what the original Don't Break the Ice would have looked like. Very, very close. And I gotta say, production-wise, I think the quality of the Hasbro edition is phenomenal. It's just great. Everything's really solid. I wish the game box was as nicely designed as the Schaper game box. That would be probably my biggest complaint, is simply the additional storage space required to get this to fit in more hassle-free. So, I mean, putting the game away can be a bit frustrating with the Hasbro edition because you've just got this one narrow flip top. You've got to pull, this frame is all one piece. You pull these 4 legs out, and then you end up setting the frame in there. I wouldn't want to put it away loaded, I guess is my thing is. I feel like if I put it away with all of the ice pieces packed in, that would eventually cause the plastic to form to that dimension, and then you wouldn't have the pressure holding the ice cubes in. So I wouldn't want to store it that way. I'd want to store the pieces loose. And in that instance, what you end up doing is putting part of the frame in the box and then trying to funnel all the parts in to this open area and then haphazardly slide it in. So that extra little bit, that extra ½ inch that they could add in depth would really make a huge difference in game storage here. Now, let's have a look at the rules on the Hasbro edition, because we've already seen on the Schaper edition, the rules are right on the back of the box. They're right on the back of the box. If you've been watching the show at all, you know I love games that print the rules on the back of the box because you won't lose them. Now, we have a quarter fold, full color print with nice sealed glossy paper. This is an adequate rule book. I mean, to be completely honest, this is the first time I even opened this. I took a brief glance at what the materials were for the rule book when I opened the game to play. And honestly, Don't Break the Ice is so super easy to play. I don't know why you would even really worry about this too much. So the funny thing is half of the content on the back page, so we have Let's Play. The rules are actually just this tiny little piece here. And then as I see right now, half of this is just facts about Philip, the imaginary penguin. The imaginary, as Benedict Cumberbatch would say, penguin on here. This penguin named Philip, his favorite game is freeze tag. Favorite food is frozen pizzas. You're killing me here, Iceman. Now this is... This is not horribly needed, so I'm not too worried. But will it stand the test of time? Of course. Whenever you have these papers that fold in quarters, though, you will notice some wear and tear right in the middle there where that quarter fold meets. And so I'm not a big fan. I prefer like a booklet fold out, or, you know, something that's like a tri-fold, something that doesn't have those little corner folds. But realistically, you lose. Everybody knows how to play Don't Break the Ice. It takes very little intuition to figure this out just by looking at it. So I don't think that the rules wearing out is a tragedy with this game, albeit I will say when I'm comparing these two head to head, the packaging and the rules for the Schaper game, head and shoulders above the packaging and the rules for the Hasbro game as far as practicality. When it comes to actually like eye-catching game art, and I flipped this around even, so we gotta make sure that we have the game art for it. But when it comes to eye-catching game art, yeah, you got these kids up front having a good time. This somehow feels, you know, when you see a game that's being marketed as educational and it doesn't look like it has a huge fun factor. I mean, we all know Don't Break the Ice is a lot of fun, but this certainly doesn't catch the eye and scream fun to me quite as much as my little cartoon, my wild cartoon penguin guy going, whoa, man, don't break the ice. He's a little bit more eye-catching and I think a little bit more appealing to the target audience. So I will say that the game box art on the 2016 edition definitely wins against the art on the 1970 edition, but the practicality of the packaging definitely wins out in 1970. Also the rules. When we get to the games themselves, like I said before, generous amounts of plastic were used, lots of detail on the, I love the greebling on the ice. The ice blocks, the sculpt on the side of the board, the mallets, though light, I mean, you can definitely put some pressure behind them. They definitely hit very nicely. So yeah, everything about the function is great. I would say there's no reason to go after a vintage model of Don't Break the Ice unless you have an affectation for that particular year, if it's the one that you grew up with. Quality-wise, 100%. 100% go with the 2016 Hasbro. This is a glowing review for this game. I'm going to just throw it out there that I am so pleased to see that this one was so incredibly well made. I'm incredibly happy with this game. So as far as updates go, just wonderful. Just wonderful. This pleases the couch. I like this one. So Don't Break the Ice. What do you think? Did you play Don't Break the Ice? Do you love the game? What do you think about the modern updates? Do you prefer the more plain Jane look of the original? I mean, this is a very straightforward design, albeit it's a little scarier to have a guy falling through the ice as opposed to a penguin that can handle it. So tell me, what do you think? Don't Break the Ice. Comment below, let me know. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time. This is Kerplunk. It was originally produced by Ideal in 1967 and was invented by Eddie Goldfarb and Rene Soriano. It's a game of skill where players take turns removing these thin plastic sticks from their spaces in this plastic tube. The sticks are balancing these glass marbles on top. When the players pull too many sticks, the glass marbles will fall down below and land into their numbered tray. The object of the game is to be the player with the least amount of marbles after the last one has dropped. This is a lot of fun. It's actually genius in its simplicity, and I thought it would be really neat to compare this original 1967 edition of Kerplunk to this current 2021 edition from Mattel and see what's changed and what stayed the same over the course of about 60 years. Let's dive right in, starting with the box on the 1967 Ideal edition of Kerplunk. Right away, this thing is very eye-catching. I absolutely love the titling on this, the giant Kerplunk. That's so great. The cartoon hand is really simplistic. It kind of gives you just a basic idea of the game visually without getting too complicated. When we flip it over, the back is blank white, and this is a two-piece lift-off top box. It has the instructions printed on the underside of the lid, which I have such a soft spot for. And then also, this had an amazing presentation when you first unboxed it. There's a small organizer inside that'll hold the box for your marbles, the catch tray for the marbles, and the cylinder for the game, as well as a little area where the sticks can be bound to this cardboard backer. It's all very attractive, and I gotta say, this is not the first game from Ideal during this era of production that I've reviewed that has had an amazing box insert. I mean, Buckaroo was awesome. So, and Challenge the Chief as well. So they have a good track record of really nice box inserts with their games. Now let's take a look at the 2021 edition of Kerplunk from Mattel. So this was the most recent one that I could get my hands on. I bought it right off the store shelf here in 2025, and it didn't look like there were any other more recent editions available at the store. So I believe this will be our best comparison. And right away, the box art is eye-catching. It's very bright with this nice bright green here. A nice cartoon representation of what the actual game is like. So no misleading there. And Kerplunk at this stage in the game is a pretty iconic game. So we know what we're getting into when we're picking this one up. Now, contrary to the Ideal edition, when you flip this one over, there's a nice picture of some kids enjoying the game and your basic standard fare for board game boxes. You have some close-ups of the game elements, and a little blurb of what the gameplay is going to be like. Now, this is a single-piece box made of a relatively flimsy tag board, and the top flips open for storage. There's no organizer inside, so a lot of these pieces are going to be sitting loose, and one of my complaints is that right away, with these flip-top boxes, you always have a pretty sizable gap where little parts can walk away through. So you're going to want to make sure that you get yourself a Ziploc bag for the marbles and for the sticks at the very least, because there was nothing really provided. They came in plastic bags, but they certainly weren't resealable. I like to try to repurpose what comes in games, but it did not look like they would be usable enough to keep everything safe. So I gotta say that the box art is very attractive for 2021, but this loses out in the long run when you compare it to this gorgeous 1967 editions box from Ideal. Now let's get to the games themselves. I'd like to start with the 1967 edition from Ideal. Now, this is interesting. I actually thought that this coloration of this cylinder was yellow because of ambering, which naturally happens with a number of different types of plastic. But as it turns out, these came this way. So even though the art makes it look significantly more clear, a lot of the original editions of Kerplunk had this yellow plastic. And then also the catch tray, the plastic on the catch tray is blue, as well as this centerpiece that all the little skewers are pushed through. Now these sticks, and I've seen them referred to online as straws as well, they're not pointy, though they look relatively pointy, and they have a decent amount of flex. In the 1967 edition, you get red and yellow for your colors, which is fine. You don't need a huge variety here. And the marbles were nice, you know, pretty traditional little cat's eye marbles of various different colors, all glass. Later on with Kerplunk, they did start adding a gold marble. This edition is a little too early, but in some editions, there was a gold marble that people could treat as a plus or minus 5, which was kind of neat. So you may see some editions that have an odd marble out. Anyway, the rules of the game are pretty simple. What happens is each one of these 4 trays on the bottom is numbered, and in the 1967 edition, the numbers are painted on there. This cylinder has a hole in top for you to drop the marbles in, and as you can see, all these little skewers are poked through these little holes here, and they create sort of a lattice that supports these marbles. Each player will start their turn by rotating the cylinder so that this bottom ejection door faces their respective little I guess cubby or whatever catch tray that's numbered for that player, and they will pull one of these sticks out. Now, according to the rules, pretty much as soon as you've committed your hand to touching the cylinder and touched one of these sticks, you're committed to pulling that one that you touched. So you better be cautious and make sure that you're eyeing this up carefully. Now, if you pull one of these skewers and a marble falls down the chute and makes the wonderful sound that is the game's namesake, Kerplunk, you get to keep that marble, and that becomes part of your score. So at the end of the game, when all of the marbles have dropped through the lattice into each player's respective dish, you tally up, and the player with the fewest marbles wins. So it's a very simplistic game of skill. I will say, oddly enough, one of the more challenging parts is getting all of the skewers fed through the cylinder before the game. So I thought that was amusing that just setting it up takes almost as long as playing the game in some instances. I think the first time I set this one up, I was so nervous with the 67 edition because these are flexible, but when you have something this old with this plastic, I was really worried it would be brittle and would break. So I was being extra cautious while assembling this for play the first time. That being said, the construction has held up. It's very sturdy. There's a tiny little crack I see down at the bottom here, but when you think about the fact that glass marbles have been dropping and pummeling the base of this plastic for the lifetime of the game, a small chip or crack is really nothing that's too concerning to me. All of the plastic is very sturdy and thick. There's almost no flex here. You really have to squeeze to get any flex out of the cylinder. The tray has a little bit, but not much. So everything feels very sturdy. Another thing that I like is the way that this sits in the tray. Part of the gameplay dynamic is to rotate this cylinder from player to player, and the rotation is exceptionally smooth in the 1967 edition. So all around, the fit and the finish for the game, excellent. Also, one thing that I did like is when you open this game up, their storage solution was that cardboard backer that's included that has a small pocket for you to use to place this box, which they provide for your Kerplunk marbles. So Ideal gave you a box for your marbles and a little space in the organizer to keep the box from rolling around inside the greater game box. It secures this little cylinder here for gameplay, and there is a spot where these skewers can be bundled with some small rubber binders. In fact, when I got this edition, we found that one of the original rubber binders from 1967 was still in the box, but it was very brittle and did end up crumbling quite easily. But it was kind of neat to see what size. We were able to get the exact size for replication, so that was kind of neat. So storage-wise, it's probably, I would say I would credit a certain amount of this game's longevity to how well the game box manages to store it and keep all the parts from both getting lost and shaking around inside the box enough to damage each other. So excellent quality for the 1967 edition from Ideal. So awesome game there. Now, got a little bit of dust. Little bit of dust. Oh, there we are. I don't want to put the game away dirty. So, very nice game from Ideal here. Kerplunk has definitely held up and stood the test of time. Let's have a look and see what has changed and what stayed the same in the 2021 edition from Mattel. Now, right away, we can see that there are some color differences with the plastic, and I actually really like this more uniform blue color. It makes the whole thing look clean. Not that there's anything wrong with the yellow, but like I said, my gut reaction when I saw this was that this had ambered over time with age, as is common with a lot of clear plastics. But this one, no, this actually looks quite nice with this blue tint. I will note right away that the plastic feels quite a bit thinner. There's at least a lot more flex, definitely with the base tray and the cylinder. Another thing is you'll notice that we now have 3 colors of the sticks, and they don't appear to be as thick, but they also don't appear to be as pointy. Not that these were sharp in any way, but there was a bit of a taper on the end of the older ones, and I think that was to help guide them through each other. Instead, these are a bit more blunted and round. So even though these are less of a danger of hurting anybody, these are significantly safer. But other than that, they are very bendy and flexy, which is nice. It made setup relatively easy. Again, what you're doing is threading these through these little holes here in the cylinder so that you can eventually pull them back out on your turn. And yes, it still is a bit of a challenge. When you compare these directly, I don't see a huge change in the actual size of the holes that these skewers are going through, or that the little sticks are going through. The shape of the cylinder seems largely the same. The dimensions of the game seem largely the same. So it presented all of the same issues when you were setting up the game as far as difficulty getting the skewers in place. But that being said, because they didn't deviate, it played largely the same. Now, one of my biggest complaints, however, I have 2 complaints. Kerplunk can survive with lighter weight plastic, so I don't really consider it a huge complaint to say they used less material when, frankly, that did not affect my feel for the actual gameplay itself. In fact, I dare say that the lighter weight plastic gave a more satisfying kerplunk sound when the marble struck it, as opposed to the sharper tap that the thicker plastic gave. So that was kind of a boon. However, one thing that I don't like is on the bottom of this cylinder, ooh, a few skewers fell out there. At the bottom of this cylinder, unlike the 67 edition, there's a little bit of a round step that comes out on the bottom, similar to like what you might get on the bottom of a drinking cup. And there is a cutout in the bottom of this tray that's round, and the tolerance between that little step and that hole is so tight that it almost snaps in like a Lego. And so the issue is if it doesn't snap in and then rotate freely, it just sort of snugs in there. Well, a dynamic of the game is rotating this cylinder, and that extra bit of friction, it doesn't add any stability either. Since it doesn't fit correctly, since it doesn't fit too tight, it's always kind of rocking and popping out just a little bit. Oh, I hate that sound too. But also, if you do kind of snug it in there, then when you have to turn it for your turn, you really got to put in some extra effort, and it's jerky. And part of the game is when you're rotating this cylinder for your turn, if any marbles fall when you're making that move, those count towards your score. So you really want the game, the construction of this game to be stable and to move smoothly. And you can hear the plastic rubbing when I'm trying to do that. I mean, this is just off its own weight, just without me even pushing very hard on it. So I will say that I don't mind the reduction in the amount of plastic in the actual heavy plastic component parts, because I don't think that these parts warrant an overuse of plastic. They're plenty sturdy. The game does not require a whole lot. It's simple at its core. But what I will say is whoever decided to engineer this portion, the tolerances are way off. If this little section of the tray was opened a bit more and it rotated smoothly, I wouldn't have any trouble. But because they decided to cut those tolerances so tight and now it doesn't fit, it very much adversely affects the game. So I'm surprised to see that, well, like I said, they hit the mark in so many regards. There's no loss of quality with the glass marbles. I would say that they're arguably the same, if not actually clearer and more variety of color. The quality of glass is quite nice. Fewer bubbles in these than what I got with the Ideal packs, which structurally means that these will be more sound and less likely to crack over time. The sticks are quite nice. I like that they're flexy. As you saw, one of the downfalls of them having a narrower gauge, considering that the holes seem to even be about the same size, at least visually, as what they are in the cylinder that the 67 Kerplunk has, the skewers being thinner, as you saw when I just simply tipped it. Some of the ones that were lower down and not held by pressure from the marbles had slid right out. So I had lost just a couple of them there. So that's not really the case with the 1967 edition. I'm trying not to make a ton of extra noise. I mean, there are some that are looser than others, but yeah, almost all this, the actual tolerance is enough on the skewer. So it's interesting. I guess the best way to look at this is the 1967 edition has a much tighter tolerance on these skewers, and everything else seems to be a bit more forgiving, making the game smoother to play as far as transitioning turns, but more challenging to play when it comes to removing the little sticks, whereas the newer version, because of the tolerance being out of whack, moving from player to player is more challenging, whereas removing these sticks there's very little friction holding them in place. So I'm surprised at what shortcomings I see here. But before we get too far into this, let's get to the rule books and get that out of the way. So, as I said before, the rules on the 1967 Kerplunk game are printed on the underside of the game box, which is always a great move. That's always something that I love to see in games because it's very difficult to destroy the rules in that regard, and you're not going to lose them. Obviously, they stood the test of time. The rules for Kerplunk did not get lost because they were part of the box. So almost 60 years, boom, they're right there. Now we go to the 2021 edition, and we have this little paper fold out, which actually, the rules are so simple to this game. We've got English and French here. and no space is wasted. That's straight to the point, tells you how to play the game. The only thing is it's very thin paper. So my only detractor, this doesn't have corner folds. It's not folded into quarters. It's just folded in half. It's unsealed, just regular white bond paper, black and white print. So this has every indicator of standing the test of time, save for the fact that it's super thin. And again, like I said, it's nice that they were able to make use of space and they're not wasting anything, but it's a simple game. However, that being said, again, a lift-off top box for more secure storage of the small parts and printing the instructions on the underside of the lid would have really elevated the 2021 edition. So I'm wondering what the cost difference between package options would have been to make this more enticing. But again, they both have reasonable rules as far as what's written down. It's easy to follow. None of them are overly complicated as far as how they're written. But I'm going to go ahead and say that the 1967 Kerplunk wins for having the rules printed on the underside of the lid of the box. Hey, I'm partial. What can I say? It pleases the couch. Now, overall, when we're comparing these games, let's talk about quality. Is it worth getting a vintage copy of Kerplunk versus going with a new copy of Kerplunk? Base gameplay, there's no reason to really avoid this, save for, I mean, that tolerance really bugs me. I'm not going to lie. Like, everything else is so similar. But I will say that I am a little bothered by the tolerance of that tray fitting into the cylinder up here, and that really does affect how the game plays. Other than that, as you can see, these are so close to each other as far as built to spec that no, I don't really see any other reason why I would go off. And honestly, worst case scenario, you just rotate the whole board. There's no saying that you actually have to leave the marbles in there to count them at the end of the game. You can certainly just fish out your marbles whenever you've dropped some down and rotate without having to worry about actually turning this cylinder within the tray. So it's not the end of the world. And when you're dealing with Kerplunk, this isn't exactly the most expensive game out there. So there's only so much complaint that you can have with a little bit of lack of fit and finish. So overall, though, the game is a lot of fun. The nice thing about Kerplunk is right away, it's like I said, it's a very recognizable game. At this stage in pop culture, we've seen Kerplunk around enough that you pop this open, pretty much everybody's familiar. Teaching somebody how to play is nothing. It's like an affair of a couple minutes. And overall, it's that extra excitement of having, like I said, I like 3D games, I like puzzle games, I like skill games, anything that's tactile like this, that involves a little bit of concentration. These kind of things are very attractive for getting pickup games. So I always recommend games like Kerplunk, and I highly recommend Kerplunk itself. So I don't think you could go wrong going with an old edition of Kerplunk or a new edition. Personally, I do prefer the build quality of the 67, and the packaging of the 67 is insane. So as a collector's item, I will say the ideal version of Kerplunk is really neat and definitely worth taking a look. And again, like I said before, this is not a hyper rare or hyper valuable game, but it is certainly a recognizable game. It's culturally significant. A lot of people have grown up with Kerplunk in their game closet, so this is something that always brings warm feelings to the game table. But I wouldn't shy away from recommending a new version of the game either. The fit and finish issues are not game breaking, and the changes that they've made over the years, it's not anything that I'm too concerned with. Did they cut down on plastic use? Yes. Is that more environmentally sound? Yeah, so that's fair. However, would I appreciate a little bit better attention to some of these tolerances? Well, yeah, because I mean, what's the point of avoiding plastic use if the product that you produce is of lesser grade because of it? Because that just in itself becomes a whole bit of waste. But I certainly wouldn't call this waste. I still think that this is a well-made game. I still think it's worth the purchase price, and I still think it's worth having available for game night. So now's the part where I ask you, hey, Kerplunk, do you have fond memories of this game? Is this a new one for you? What do you think of the differences from 1967 till today? Comment below, let me know. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time. This is Don't Spill the Beans, a classic game of skill from Schaper. Now today I have this 1967 edition that I'd like to compare to this 2021 Hasbro edition and see what's changed and what stayed the same over the course of about 60 years. Now first off, I want to say I was trying to research this and came at a bit of an impasse here. I'm seeing a lot of conflicting records online as to whether or not this game was invented in 1957 or 67. Now, the version I have on hand is a 1967, and it was the oldest one I could get my hands on, and so far I have not encountered anything that was stamped as an older version of the game. So I am curious to know if perhaps the game was invented and then not published until 10 years later, or what the history was, but I haven't been able to find too much. So if anybody watching happens to have any insight, please do comment. I would be very interested to hear that history. But anyways, today we've got this 1967 Schaper edition of the game. We're going to compare it to this 2021 Hasbro and see all of the differences, because right away we can see there are plenty. So let's dive right in, starting with the box art. Now this is classic for Schaper. I recently reviewed Don't Break the Ice, and the art looks very similar as far as showing the kids enjoying the game. How the game itself is depicted actually more as a painting than a photograph. And this titling here, the text that they chose, the font, it screams 1967. I love it. This is definitely a really nice throwback vintage package with plenty of space for storage. Now the back of the box is blank, and this does have a lift-off top. Inside there's a cardboard organizer to hold the little trays for your beans, your kettle, and your base. Now the beans themselves store in the kettle. This little plastic plate here that they rest on during gameplay twists and pops out so you can drop them in. So the box does show what looks like a drawstring bag labeled beans on the front. I don't know if that actually was included, be it that in this version I didn't see it, and like I said, the instructions suggest that storage of the beans should be in the kettle. So that might just be for show to let you know that you're playing with beans, which we'll get to in a minute. It's kind of neat. You play with real kidney beans in this edition of the game. Another thing that I really like is the rules are printed on the underside of the lid of the box. Yes, simplicity and durability. That's something that I'm very happy to see. So let's hop over to the 2021 edition from Hasbro. Right away, this is a whole lot cheaper and lighter. I just want to point that out. I wasn't picking this up and moving it around. I don't want to knock stuff over on the table, but this is tiny. And I gotta say, when I received this, it was already kind of crushed because this is some flimsy packaging right here. The bottom I actually had to glue back together because the light glue on here had popped open. So I'm gonna go ahead and say, right out of the gate, given the condition that I got this in, as a storage solution, not great. However, that being said, the art on the front is really nice and eye-catching. I really like the cartoon depiction of the jar now instead of a kettle, holding what appear to be jelly beans instead of beans. We also have a little picture of a young girl having fun playing the game in the front. She's concentrating really hard. When we flip it over, we have a closer shot of a couple of kids enjoying the game. And I actually thought this was amusing. I recognize this little boy from the Cootie game, which is another classic Schaper game that Hasbro has been making. So that was kind of neat. He looks like he's absolutely having the time of his life, so good for him. I'm willing to bet we're going to see him on some other game boxes as well going forward. However, I did have a good laugh at this young girl's expression because she has a sort of look of shock. I don't know. It's like when you're being polite, like if you're at a dinner party, you just took a mouthful of something and said, wow, this is really good. What is it? And they say, oh, it's haggis. Do you know what's in haggis? And they've never heard of what's in haggis before. I think the expression is hilarious. It reminds me of that meme. What is it? Hide the Pain, Harold, or whatever. Just great. But the kids still look like they're having a good time. It's classic board game fare. It is a flip top box, so this opens up kind of like a bad cereal box. Again, something that kind of bothers me is there's no great storage solution for all these beans, and the bottom of the box, it's very easy for them to come out. So get yourself a Ziploc bag or some manner of resealable vessel to keep these in, because unlike the original edition, this has to be broken down completely to fit into the box. The actual jar breaks into two pieces. This little top also, everything's very loose on this one. This little top also twists off, kind of. There we go. And then these two pieces come apart. So this modern version of the game has quite a bit more disassembly involved when you're setting it up and taking it down. And that's, I don't know. I'm not a fan. I like simplicity in my design. So that being said, though, it doesn't look fundamentally too different from the original. And on that note, I think we should dive right into the game and its elements itself, starting with this 1967 edition of Don't Spill the Beans from Schaper. This thing has a really distinct look. I love the big black cauldron, the red base. These little trays here actually have a really nice print, kind of like leaves. You play with real kidney beans in the 1967 edition. Now, I'm not sure these were with this when I purchased it, so some of them were a bit beat up and I cleaned them up and discarded them, but there's the great possibility that these beans have been with this game since the 60s. So I thought that was pretty neat. Gameplay is really simple. Players start with a number of beans in their tray. You just divide them up evenly and they go around taking turns, strategically dropping beans into the cauldron here. And the trick is the bottom portion of the cauldron is empty and there's this little tray on top that holds the beans up high. So the point of balance is much higher than this little axle here. And what ends up happening is it becomes very easy to throw the balance off when you're stacking these beans. Now, I don't know if I have enough just in this one tray to do it. I'm just kind of placing them actually relatively recklessly because I'm sure it'll take a couple minutes to actually throw the balance off. But that's kind of what's fun, is these beans don't weigh very much, and yet the results can be quite dramatic when you start to see, oh, there we go. Oh, right on the edge. Now, I'm kind of placing these off balance so you can see the action in play. But strategically speaking, you could make this go around a lot more. Ooh. By trying to carefully balance. Now, here's the thing is, if the beans tip over or any fall into the tray, the player who placed them has to add them to their count. The goal is to be the first player to empty your tray completely. So, of course, if the beans tip over, which I almost cheated here, but let's stack them. Let's see if we can do it without just losing a couple. There we go. So that's satisfying. When the beans fall over, whoever knocked them down has to add them to their tray. So you could just say that the first person to empty wins, or you could really play all out and have players play until full elimination. That would be kind of fun too. But the rules of the game, again, very simple. Game of skill and balance. You're not supposed to touch the cauldron or the other beans when you place them, so you are supposed to just gently drop them from right above. But this is actually a lot of fun. I mean, there's a reason why this game has endured for so long. The design is relatively simplistic. I mean, yes, it's definitely a prop game, which I like. I like games that rely on a shtick. I like these little plastic games of skill, Kerplunk, Jenga, you know, those little labyrinth things, Forbidden Bridge, Fireball Island. Anything that has a little bit more to it like this is fun to me. So I just like the theatricality. And I gotta say, this is a classic design. I think it's instantly recognizable to a lot of people. I mean, this was a very popular game when I was growing up, and rightfully so. Very easy point of entry for anybody. I can't even remember what the required age is on this, but I can't imagine it's very old. I'm sure you could have a 4-year-old play this and have a good time. Maybe a little younger, but kind of depends also on reflexes and motor skill, because it could be very frustrating for a little one if they don't quite have the motor skill to gently drop a bean. But it's good exercise and good practice, so there's one way of looking at it. However, now that I don't know why, I just wanted to have an even distribution of beans in these trays. It just feels more like them. There we go. Now the display is good. Moving on, let's have a look at the 2021 edition from Hasbro. Now, we've changed theme. First off, you're going to notice the beans are very colorful plastic beans. These are a tactile pleasure. I'm not going to lie. It's like getting a nice set of dice. They're a little weightier than a kidney bean, but not by very much. They have cute little cartoon faces printed on them. I love it. There's different faces too. There's a variety of faces. So it's not just like each color is a different face. They all kind of have a little bit of a variety. So I like that. Right away, the game components are nice. I don't like that this breaks into so many parts for storage, because there are some weak points where the jar actually fits together. There are these little pins. There are these little pins on the edge here, and I noticed that when I got mine right away, because of the clear plastic, it was easy to notice where this got scuffed and a little plastic fatigue resulted, and that was brand new out of the box in that condition. So you have some issues with packaging as far as protecting the product, or possibly something that happened in production. However, we also do need to temper our expectations with such a low-cost game. To be fair, this wasn't very expensive, and the fit and finish when I got it was not something that was overly disappointing. I do also need to credit Hasbro. They are really sticking to reducing plastic waste with these products. So even though, yes, the game relies on these plastic beans, which are not single use and if stored responsibly are perfectly safe, along with all the rest of these parts, the fundamental design of this game is heavily reliant on plastic. So the fact that everything that they included for packaging for the parts reduced as much plastic as possible is something that I applaud. These beans came in a little paper bag here. Otherwise, everything was loose. There was no extra plastic. So these scuffs that I'm complaining about, within reason, could have happened just bouncing around in the box. And frankly, I guess if my choice is to have this arrive in pristine condition, which does not necessarily affect the product performance, versus reducing the plastic waste by having every little part individually wrapped, I'm going to go ahead and take one for the team and say I'd rather have my product arrive with a small amount of scuff than contribute to a landfill. So, points to Hasbro. I just want to point that out. Even though I'm a little frustrated by some of the stuff with the delivery, even the cheap box, we're going to take the cheap boxes even in an attempt to be green here. So let's give credit where credit's due and be fair. If nothing else, we can be fair on this program. Now, obviously, I'm not going to leave you waiting here. Let's try this one out. What's interesting about this is they've opted for a glass jar and these colorful beans, which leads me to believe that the theme is less about boiling beans in a kettle and more about jelly beans in a jar, which, you know, I would say for a modern audience is probably a little bit more relatable. I'm willing to bet small children have encountered jars full of jelly beans more frequently than giant kettles full of kidney beans, especially like a cauldron like that. So, you know, I can understand adjusting for a modern audience in that regard. And still, I think the aesthetic is fun. It's interesting that now they've added a small amount of... Oh, wow! There. See, that didn't take very much. Compared to how many beans I have, that really didn't take too much. I was going to say I kind of enjoy the personification of the jar. The beans having little faces, but also the jar having a cartoony face. Sometimes they add personification in games that's a little freaky. Like I recently, and we'll have a look here soon at Operation, but I recently looked at a modern version of Operation, and the ailments that Cavity Sam has now have faces on them. So now when you're removing, like, say, a funny bone, it's a bone with a laughing face on it, which I found a bit unnerving, but at the same time, they're trying to add a certain level of cartooniness. But it is surprising because some stuff does not need to be, you know, anthropomorphic. Oh, I love just kind of, it was off balance enough it slowly tips. You know, that's what I like about both of these games here. The design is very similar. They play very similar. You're just looking at modern technology catching up. So before, actually, I don't want to miss myself here. I know I mentioned the instructions were printed on the underside of this box, but before we go further, I normally cover the rule books. So the instructions underside of the lid of the 1967 edition, awesome. This pleases the couch. The 2021 edition actually comes with a sturdy, this is a heavier paper. This is nice. It's not quite a cardstock, but this is definitely like a nice 100-pound sealed paper, full bleed print. It's not saddle stitch because the rules are not that complex, so it's just a fold over. They've got simple assembly instructions, which include applying the stickers, which I loathe applying stickers to things because I'm terrible at it. So let's be fair. It's not just that I hate putting stickers on dice. It's that I hate putting stickers on everything. But the stickers are neat, and I like their effect. So that was cool. But they have assembly instructions, basic gameplay instructions. I love the little hint. The more beans there are, the more careful you need to be. You know, thank you, Captain Obvious, but he's just a jelly bean. He's doing his best. And then I like that they have instructions on how to put away the game that basically say, take it apart, dummy. Put it back in the box. As far as storage, like I said, these little plastic jelly beans that are very fun to handle came in like a little paper bag. Now the problem was it was taped shut, so when I was trying to open it up, it tore, and there was also a hole in mine when it arrived. So I couldn't reuse it as much as I'd like to. So I would advise get a resealable plastic bag or zipper pouch to keep these in, because you do have to disassemble this jar for storage, which is too bad, but I guess they're also trying to reduce shelf space, because I mean, look at the physical size difference there. That's a big difference. Just saying. However, I do like the luxurious feeling of having a nice caddy and organizer that the 1967 box provides. So I don't know. I'm partial to the 1967 setup. Now, let's talk turkey. What do we think? What do we think? Which one is better? I gotta say, gameplay-wise, both are fun. I actually thought it was amusing that you no longer have trays for your beans, but I don't think that that's something that you need. I think it's pretty easy to just divide up some handfuls of beans. You don't necessarily have to count them, but I suppose if somebody was really sensitive about it, you could. It seems in both games they provide more than enough. So realistically, you just split these and hand them off to your friends. That's good enough to play the game. And that's kind of how I felt with these kidney beans, because before you get, in this instance, and I don't know if this is the original amount of beans, you can always add more. In this instance, what I like is you expend just over 3/4 of the beans that I have with this game to get it to tip in most instances if you're playing with skilled players, which obviously with this one, since the beans are heavier, you expend fewer beans. But both of these have a certain level of uncertainty and drama. However, I will say something about having the clear jar that's not full, but with the beans balancing on top, aesthetically is not as pleasing to me as the big black cauldron with the beans boiling over. So there are some design things that I like more than others, depending on which model that you're getting. However, both of these are excellent for fun gameplay, wonderful for family game night. I think that given the price tag and everything, like I said, could the packaging have been better? Yes. The trade-off being environmentally friendly, given the quality of the product and the price of the product as is, sure, I've got some frustrations with fit and finish. At the same time, they didn't cut corners enough to make this feel cheap, cheesy, and like it's going to end up in a landfill. And that's one thing that I don't like, is when standards drop so much on a modern game that I feel like it will not stand the test of time, and that just purchasing it has contributed to waste. So I will say that I do appreciate that Hasbro has stuck to their guns on reducing plastic waste, and this is an excellent example within their product range showing that. So I think both are worth picking up. I think both are a lot of fun. Hygienically, I think the plastic beans are better for young kids to play with than actual dried beans. I would say that I would be more inclined to track down a vintage model for adults. If I was a collector, if I had a big nostalgia factor or something like that where I just really wanted it, like this is a great display piece. I love this. I love the cover art's just great. This looks great. I like it. I definitely think it's worth tracking down as a collector. For practical gameplay purposes, there's no reason why you shouldn't pick up a modern edition. They're not reinventing the wheel here. These are just predominantly stylistic changes. And I do think that, like I said, these would be super easy, be it that they're plastic, to just throw into a colander and sanitize real quick and pack away. So if you have multiple kids playing these, you're worried about them, you know, getting grody, don't worry about it. These should be super easy to clean up and take care of. They're nice and solid. They're not going to go anywhere. So nice components. Nice job, Hasbro. I actually do like the new Don't Spill the Beans. It has some design trade-offs that I'm not so hot on, but they're nothing that harm the game. So I guess I'm going to put it to you. Now that you've seen both, what do you like? Do you like the original or do you like the new version with the jelly beans? Comment below, let me know. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time. This is Operation. It was originally invented in 1964 by John Spinello while he was a student at the University of Illinois. He sold the rights to noted toy and game designer Marvin Glass, who you may recognize from his work on such classics as Simon, Mousetrap, or Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Spinello sold the rights to Marvin Glass for $500 and the promise of a job after he graduated, which unfortunately he did not get. Marvin Glass worked with Milton Bradley to produce the game as Operation in 1965. Currently, Hasbro owns production rights, and it's estimated that the franchise is worth almost $40 million. This is a cool classic, and I can't wait to have a look at the modern interpretation as well as some of the originals. So let's get it on the table and take a look. Okay, this is awesome. So today I've got a wide range of Operation tables here. So starting off on the far end, we have the original 1965. Now I don't have the 1965 box on the table here. I have some space constraints, obviously, but we have the 1965 version of Operation. Then we have the 1987 reprint of the 1965. Now this one also has the box art on display on the end here. In front of the 65, and actually that box art is the same. There are some subtle differences that we'll go over, but overall this is pretty much what you were getting as box art. There was a little bit different wording in 65. You had the silver Milton Bradley stripe along the side of the box instead of white, and it said the electric game. As opposed to this one, they kind of cut the electric part out. You'll also notice that the actual 1965 board says Electro Probe on the board, whereas in 87 it does not. Then I also have this themed 2005 Simpsons edition here. This one is just neat. There are a number of other themed versions of Operation. There's also like SpongeBob, for instance, but this just happened to be one that I ran across that I thought was pretty cool. Then we have the 2015. Now I just picked this off the store shelf the other day and had started a video on Operation, and I decided to restart because in 2025, Hasbro brought us another version of Operation. So, though I thought this one was the most current, it turns out that we have an even newer one. So we've got kind of a treasure trove of Operation games to look at today. So let's get started with the box art. Now we're going to jump right into the 1965 edition, which is pretty wild and is really like, it screams the 60s. It screams the 60s. The cartoon style is awesome. I love the surgeon actually smoking while he's working on Poor Cavity Sam. Now, like I said, the art from the 1965 is the same cover art that they used in the 1987 87. They just changed it up a little bit as far as the fit and finish. The 1965 box is a bit longer. It's blank on the back, but inside it features a little organizer to hold all of the parts. That was kind of neat. In 87, the box got shorter to fit the dimensions of the actual operating table itself. And it does not have that insert on the inside, although it is blank on the back, just like the original. When we get to 2005, we have a lift-off top box as well that's sized to fit the table. On the back of the box, there's a close-up photo of the operating table so you know what you're actually getting, because the front of this is very stylized based off the Simpsons cartoon. Then we go over to 2015 here, where there's actually a cutout on the box, and that is because the 2015 board features a Try Me feature with Cavity Sam's nose. The buzzer is also haptic. It now has force feedback, which I thought was really neat. So you actually get a physical sensation when you hit the edge here. The whole thing vibrates, and it's a bit more jarring. I thought that was pretty cool. But I also like the little tester thing for his nose. I thought that was kind of cool. So they added that little cutout in the front of the box. Now this one is also a lift-off top, and with all of the small parts, I was worried about losing them, but Hasbro did include a small zip seal bag. So if you put the parts in the box beneath the operating table, which there is a little bit of space with these legs here, so there's plenty of room for it to fit in the box without falling out the front. Now, my one thing is I do think the box should protect the game itself, and having the front cutout, though neat for a Try Me thing, for long-term storage is a little frustrating. So kind of like the Game of Life, it's neat for retail purposes, but for actual practical use, frustrating. Now we get to the 2025. Now this box was really similar to what I encountered with Battleship. The game is very much self-contained. It actually folds into a clamshell, which is a really neat design. I like it. There's even a small compartment to hold all of the cards and all of the little ailment pieces for removal from Cavity Sam. So this thing stows away and is basically like a travel version of Operation. It also introduces a new game mode, which I thought was great. You can actually set a 1-minute timer and try to remove as many ailments as possible before time runs out. So it's called a hospital mode, I think, or something like that. But I thought that was a really neat addition, because you could play that single player, and it's similar to like Perfection. You're trying to get them out as quick as possible without hitting the sides. I thought it was a fun little challenge. So anytime that you're adding more playability, that's cool with me. There's actually, this is meant to be discarded, so there's actually very little cardboard to this. It's just sort of a jacket that goes over the folded game. So again, single-use cardboard, so there is a little bit of waste, but overall, since you don't need an actual cardboard box to store like the previous editions of Operation, and it has a smaller footprint, I think that's really cool. Now, let's have a look at the games themselves. We're going to start with the 1965. Now, this one is a little worse for the wear and does not actually work. However, I did source it so that we could get a nice benchmark for the size of the cutouts for the ailments, that we could also get a look at the art and the actual dimensions of the board. And as you can see, it's very similar to the 1987 reprint. And I think there are a lot of people early on in my comment sections and other videos I did when they requested Operation. A common theme was people said that the original cutouts were narrower and had less margin for error. And we can see between 1965 and 1987 that is incorrect. The cutouts are exactly the same size. And actually, I'm just gonna go ahead and say right away, going through all of the years, all the way up to 2015, when you compare the actual plastic ailment pieces to the cutouts, the range, the size stays about the same. So actually, I do not think that Operation got easier. Now, one thing that is frustrating is a lot of people have nostalgia for that loud, jarring buzzer that the old ones had. And I'm sorry to report, but I tried to find a classic one with a buzzer that worked, and I could get a light that worked, but not a buzzer. So the 1965 one is completely seized. I can't get it to work at all. The 87, the light works, which is kind of neat. I want to point out it's an incandescent bulb, whereas we move on to LED in the later games. So, and just for fun, because everybody's seeing The Simpsons, yes, this is a talking one. So what's interesting is the 1987, the 1965, they did have just a simple buzzer, and they actually ran on D-cell batteries. D-cell batteries. These are really, really big batteries here. So very heavy. So that was definitely something that was interesting too. You don't see a whole lot of devices that run on like C and D cell batteries. A lot of stuff now we have it down to double AAA, or it's just rechargeable. Everything else that I have here runs on double and AAA. When we move right on to the 2005 Simpsons edition, obviously we have some artistic changes to it, but the general gameplay stays the same. However, at this time, we start seeing Hasbro introduce things like you heard. Instead of an actual buzzer, it's a pre-recorded audio clip. Ow, ow, ow. So in this instance, it has his voice. There's a SpongeBob one, like I said, where he spits out quotes. There are a couple others that I've seen online. I can't remember them all off the top of my head. Like I said, the Simpsons one happens to be one that was already in my collection because I thought it was really neat. But technologically speaking, it has advanced in that they reduced the batteries down to AA's on this one. We now have the LED light, which I thought this was interesting. In the 1965 edition, when I sourced this one, the previous owner had purchased replacement red incandescent bulbs in that size. So I actually have, and they will work on the 87 too. So I have some replacement incandescent red bulbs. I thought that was pretty cool. Now there's no option to replace this, whereas these, the bulb would screw right out of Cavity Sam's face here. When we get to 2005 in the Homer Simpson era, the bulbs do not screw straight out of his face, and neither do they on the later ones. In fact, like I showed with the 2015, this one actually has a button so you can press and try the buzz feature. So 2005, pretty neat. I love the comic ailments. We'll notice that we no longer have the ankle bone is connected to the knee bone challenge, which is present on all of the other Cavity Sam examples that we have here. And that one is unique in that it is the only challenge where you are not removing an ailment from Cavity Sam, but in fact, you're doing corrective surgery and placing a rubber band. So in the ankle bone is connected to the knee bone challenge, players will take a rubber band and they will take their probe and they will attempt to hook it between two posts in the knee and the ankle, and they have to stretch that rubber band without hitting the probe on the metal sides of the operating tray. So a little bit challenging there, and they removed that from the Simpsons edition, and that's kind of noticeable because it's one big piece of real estate on Homer that doesn't have anything going on. Now, when we go to 2015, we can see right away the art has gotten significantly more, but I love the art on the 2015. This is so attractive. I like how Cavity Sam, they've given him some dignity. He now has underwear instead of his big round belly covering his nethers. He now has big heart-shaped, heart print underwear. I love that. He's got a sock. I even like that he's got his little Teddy. Poor Teddy looks like he's sick too. He's got a little thermometer and Band-Aids on. But the detail is so good. I really like this. And I gotta say, I really like the haptic feedback. Oh no, this one got clipped. Now, if anybody saw my live unboxing of this, they know that the clip for the probe is really unforgiving on this one. So I gotta be careful when I stow it because that clip will catch that probe. And sorry about this, I should have taken some of these boxes off the table here for ease of use, but there we go. Okay, so now we can pick this up again. This is really neat. I actually really like the force feedback, the little vibration, because though it doesn't have the loud jarring buzz that a buzzer would, it still makes that makes a nasty buzz. And it's sort of, because you can feel it vibrate, it gives you the illusion of getting a little bit of an electroshock, because the shtick of Operation was that it was an electronic game. If I remember right, the original prototype was actually a game where you had a trail and like a little stick with a bead on it. So you'd put the bead in the larger open end, and your goal was to make it through the trail or labyrinth to the end and pull it out the other side. The game was repurposed when Marvin Glass got a hold of it, into Operation, the medical themed game, when it was sold to Milton Bradley. So there were some differences between the original concept in 1964 and the actual game that went into production in 65. But this 2015 edition is great. This one, I believe, is also a AA. Similar mechanism on the back, similar battery shield and everything. Everything's kind of put together the same. Not a whole lot has actually changed with the core design of Operation up until this point. Just technology has evolved. The bulbs got better. I like that this one is a button. I don't know how many times I've said that already, but it's a feature that I thought was really neat. I love the force feedback on the modern one. I thought that was great. Now, again, one thing that I appreciated about Operation is through the years, it seemed to stay largely the same. But then I got this really awesome 2025 edition here. This, I can't tell you how much of a pleasant surprise this was. First off, look at that art. Look at that art. Cavity Sam has never looked better. I would say that this is probably one of the best iterations of Cavity Sam. The nose still has a button there, so you can kind of test stuff. This is also how you change game modes. You hold the button until he starts counting down. And that begins the whole emergency surgery game, where you have a 1-minute countdown to remove as many ailments as you can. So again, neat little game mode. Now, some of the game changers about this game: 1, it folds up for easy storage. It's got these nice little clips on the top here, snap shut. It says Operation right on the front, has like this neat carbon fiber, faux carbon fiber pattern on it. I love the little nod to the electroprobe and the broken heart on the back. I mean, it's very sturdy. My one complaint was that the rules, and this is minor, I want to point out, and we'll get to it with the rule book, but the rule book does not fit flush inside the recessed portion of this game. There's a reason for that. We'll get into it. But I love how the probe stows. I like this new plastic boot on the probe, as opposed to, for years, we had these conical red plastic boots on the probe. This one here just feels a little bit chunkier. The probe itself is really nice. It feels just a nicer, higher quality. It feels heavier in all of the right ways. Oh, I think I put that in. There we go. That fits in a little bit better. Oddly enough, directional. Just noticed that. But I gotta say, everything about this is awesome. I even like Cavity Sam's Teddy is now part of it. There's a little challenge where you remove bad stuffing in there, so that he can feel better too. But the cards and the pieces stow in this little compartment up top. The plastic feels really firm and sturdy. I mean, these don't need to be really heavy. They're stored in a protective box, so naturally the plastic's a little thinner, but I don't feel like it diminishes the quality of the game. This modern one, the plastic is nice, thick, chunky. I love his big, bright nose. I love the art. I like that there's new game styles. Now, one thing that also changed was his ailments have changed color. Everything up until this point, the ailments, let me pull one from, here we go. All right, just for space, I didn't have everything lined up on the table here, but I have some of the ailments from The Simpsons. The ailments are these little plastic pieces that fit in the board like so. Now, in 2025, for the first time that I've noticed, they are now a different color. They are now yellow. And I also noticed that even though the ailments in previous games had a little bit of detail printing on them so that you could kind of see texture and they looked more like the images that were on the board there. Pea brain. Yay, little pea pod that goes in Homer's brain for pea brain. Now the little yellow pieces, first off, every one of the ailments on the new Cavity Sam has a face, which is a little bit weird to me. I like the comic styling of all the other ailments on all the original versions, but none of them have faces. When we look at the 2025 edition, every single ailment has a face, and that carries over to the little plastic moldings that also have faces. I also noticed this is the first one where the rubber band appears to be a completely different material. Now, the rubber bands in a lot of these, this one, Homer didn't come with one. The one that came with the modern Operation was just a traditional latex brown office supply looking rubber band, just regular rubber. That's what they've always been. And one of the issues with latex, natural latex rubber bands is over time, they will eventually dry out and crumble. This is common with that type of rubber. However, what I noticed right off the go with this, right off the bat, right away, just straight up, whatever turn of phrase works, what I noticed right away with the 2025 rubber band was that the whole thing is round. And I mean, like, it is not just that it's a rubber band that's a circle, but the actual band itself is round. Whereas you see these office supply bands, they're usually like a long rubber cylinder that's then sliced. So they are like a square band that's in a circle. This is round. So this was like molded this way. And the material feels different. I actually wonder if this is more of like a silicone. So this might actually be more stable, more shelf stable. This might last. So I'm curious to see if this will eventually dry out and crumble, or if they used a different material so that it would last longer. So that would be really cool if they switched from latex to silicone. So definitely a neat little technological leap. Now, something else I want to point out. From 1965 through 2005, what you would do when you were playing Operation is players would draw from one of two decks of cards. So first off, the specialist cards would get dealt out to all the players, and the specialist has ailments, and on the back here, the amount that you'll earn for removing that ailment. Now, specialists earn twice as much as just a regular old doctor, and the doctor cards stay in the middle of the table in a pile, and players go around and they each draw one. Okay, so if I draw P-Brain and I have to try to remove Homer's P-Brain, that's convenient. I did not stack the deck this time, and I should have. But if I try to remove Homer's P-Brain and I fail, okay, so now this card, I can't play it yet. I have to see if somebody has the specialist card, which I didn't stack this, and here we go with the P-Brain. So I might have the specialist P-Brain card, and you'll notice the P-Brain for the doctor and the P-Brain for the specialist. The doctor gets $400, the specialist gets $800 for that same surgery. So if I have the specialist card, I can make an attempt to get the P-Brain. Now, if I fail, I hold on to my card, and this card gets shuffled back into the doctor deck, and we try again later. If I succeed, I get double the amount that the doctor would have. And so that brings into play the cash. So older Operation games have $100 and $500 fake money cash dollar bills. Okay, so the goal at the end of the game is to get as much money as you can. So in the older version of Operation, you didn't necessarily have to remove the most ailments to win. Instead, you just had to earn the most money. So there was a little bit of strategy involved, because if you were a specialist, there was the chance that, let's say I drew the P-Brain card and I also possessed the specialist card for the P-Brain, I could deliberately fail the doctor challenge to give myself the chance to do it for twice as much. So there were some opportunities for players to pad their pocketbook by being a little bit, I don't know, I guess medically unethical. We got a fantasy malpractice lawsuit in the works here. So from 1965 till 2005, all the Operation games came with these doctor cards, specialist cards, and the dollar bills, and the scoring was based on the money that you earned. What I noticed when we got into 2015 is we no longer have the specialist cards. Now we simply have the ailment cards, and they have their value printed on the front and back. And how it works in the new modern versions is you draw the card, you try to remove the ailment. If you fail, the person next to you gets to try, and you go around the table. If everybody fails, you shuffle the card back in the deck and continue on. At the end of the game, players tally up how much money that they've earned with all of their cards. So it's still cash-based, but now you're not dealing with paper cash, you're just dealing with the value of the card, or the value of the ailment printed on the card. So they reduced parts. I'm actually okay with that. There's no reason to have all the extra cash. That's kind of superfluous when you can just add a score to the difficulty of the ailment that you're removing. And this carried over into the 2025 with these nice little cards, which, again, the cards, so from 65 to 2005, the doctor and specialist cards are pretty much the same. Black and white, red ink, unsealed paper, nice die cut cards. None of them looked perforated. The cash basically is operation cash, similar to like Monopoly money. Nothing to write home about. And in fact, in 65, 87, and all the way up to 2005, the color seemed to be yellow and this kind of like greenish blue. So oddly enough, the design of Operation didn't really change a whole lot throughout all those years, even when we get into the themed games. But when we get into 2015 and 2025, again, these changes where the value is just on the card, so we're not dealing with extra cash. I like the reduction of parts because it doesn't do anything to fundamentally change the game other than make it easy, make it streamlined, which I think is great. I'm curious to know why the ailments changed color in 2025 and became yellow. I wonder if that might be a color blindness thing or an accessibility thing. If so, that's awesome. Accessibility is always fun. It is a little bit weird because I'm so used to them being white plastic, but if you look at some of the older ailments, a lot of them are kind of bone related, and I'm sure that there was a cost measure involved in using white plastic for everything. Because some of them you could, in theory, like the wrench or the bucket of water for the water in the knee, that kind of stuff, I could see you going through and detail painting that for fun. Like, what a nerdy thing to do, go through and detail paint the pieces of Operation, but hey, you know, some people are hardcore, right? But awesome changes throughout the year. Really interesting. Now, let's have a quick look at the rule books. Okay, so starting with 1965, we have it printed on unsealed paper. It's just a little fold out single sheet. Then we go into 1987. We get this little longer fold out guy. This time we actually have English and Spanish. I held the Spanish up first. So we have English and Spanish. The previous 65 did not. When we get into 2005, the paper gets heavier, but the general fold out is the same. And again, it's English and Spanish. And now we have red ink. But again, this game doesn't require a whole lot. So it's giving you the necessary setup and the base rules. So there doesn't need to be a whole lot to the rules of Operation. When we get into the 2015 edition, again, now we have a single sheet. This is a bit heavier paper. This is a nice strong one here. So I'm okay with this. You're not going to lose it. It's single sheet. It's not going to wear out from folding. Now, the interesting thing on this one is I did not see multiple languages. It's just English on this one here. And then we get in a 2025 and they pull out all the stops and give us sealed paper and full color print with a nice fold over so it looks like a booklet. Now, in this instance here, it also appears to be just English. I did not see any bilingual instructions in this booklet. But again, really, really nice print job. And this is where I will point out one of the downfalls of this is all of the other rules for all the other operations, they'll fit safely in the box. When you go to put this away, there's not really a way for this Cavity Sam to fold over and fit these instructions as neatly as I'd like. It's either going to have part of the instruction rest on the outer rail here, which risks it slipping out the side, or the end is going to fold because the joint is right here. And so even if I lay it down, it goes right from the edge to mid joint. So right when this starts to fold, it's going to crunch those instructions. Pretty close, but I mean, that's really a minor gripe. The reason why these instructions aren't cut perfectly to fit is a cost issue that I can't hold against Hasbro. But it is, I mean, they're printing these full bleed and an 8.5 by 11 fold over. And that's a traditional American office page size. So like when you hear letter size, that's what they're referring to is in the United States, you're getting an 8.5 inch by 11 inch piece of paper, which this is pretty close to those dimensions folded over. And that would be super cheap to produce, especially if it's only in one language. So as much as I'd like them to have cut it down a little bit, which seems like it would be easy, it has more to do with the printing process than anything else. And so we can be forgiving of something like that, obviously. This is a nice set of instructions that will stand the test of time. The sealed paper will hold up. I love the color print. Very easy to read, nice fonts. So yeah, if I get a little extra fold stuffing it in that case, I'm not too worried. It would have been nice for fit and finish for it to trim maybe 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch. I tried fitting it and I got a little pucker. So I'd say about 1/2 inch where that pucker is would have been primo. But that's Like, that's probably one of the most minor gripes that I've had about a board game. So I guess now that we've looked at a whole bunch of versions of Operation throughout the years from 1965 all the way up to 2025, let's talk turkey and discuss which one I think is the best. Wow, that was a lot of fun. It's pretty tough to choose which version of Operation is my favorite. See, I grew up with the one from 1987, but that's essentially the same game art as the 1965. However, that being said, the array of really neat novelty versions like Simpsons, those are pretty cool as well. But overall, I think the changes that happened in 2015 and then again in 2025 were huge improvements to the game. Removing the cache so that you have fewer game parts and reducing it down to one set of cards was awesome. I also really like how the 2025 is extremely portable and every piece of it seems like it's premium quality. The instructions printed on nice sealed paper, that was awesome. I was surprised to see all the ailments change from white to yellow plastic, but that didn't really bother me, and I'm thinking that's probably an accessibility issue. The details on the ailments were really cool, though it was kind of strange that they all had faces, but it added to the cartooniness of the whole situation, and I thought that was pretty fun. Overall, I would say my favorite edition of Operation is the current one. I like how you have 2 game modes. I love the art. I love how portable it is, the quality of the parts. Overall, it's the whole package, and I thought it was a pretty good value for the money. So I gotta ask, which version of Operation is your favorite? Do you have a special attachment to one for nostalgia's sake, or maybe there's a themed one like Simpsons that you like yourself? Comment below, let me know. Thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you next time. This is Tickle Bee, and it's an adorable good time. This is a kid's game from Schaper, came out in 1956. Schaper Toys was started in Minnesota in 1949, and actually they started with Cootie. I've reviewed a number of their really cool plastic games. We've done Don't Spill the Beans and Don't Break the Ice. Essentially, a lot of the Schaper games were incredibly simple, usually hinged on a plastic kind of toy element, and were great for young kids. Now, Tickle Bee is pretty special because it uses magnets as part of the gameplay in a really ingenious way. Players will use a little wand to try to convince or tickle this little bee through a maze and hopefully not get stung along the way. Players will have to track how many times they get stung, because if they get stung once too many, they are stung out and have to start again. It looks really simple, but let's see how challenging this actually is. Why don't we get the game on the table and take a look? All right, this is great. Now, obviously this camera angle is really bad for showing off this game, so we're gonna switch it up in a little bit for some gameplay. But first, let's dive in, starting with the box. This has to be one of my favorite cover arts I've run across so far for a kid's game. This is just great. I like it when they have little taglines in front, but this tickles me. I love the little bee that seems alive as you tickle him from flower to hive. He wiggles and jiggles and scoots along. Watch out, he'll sting if you tickle him wrong. They wrote it in rhymed couplet. I mean, come on, okay, that pleases the theater kid in me, all right? I love all of the colors, his infectious smile, his little hat. Oh, it's great. The back of the box is blank, and one thing that I really do like about this, okay, before I put it away, all right, the back of the box is blank, but this is something that I really like. The instructions are printed on the underside of the lid of the box, and if you've been watching my program at all, you know this pleases the couch. I just love when they print instructions on the inside of the game box. It makes it so easy to keep them safe and sound for the life of the game. So again, and Schaper's good about that on a lot of their games. The board itself is a little vacuformed maze with a printed acetate cover. Now the acetate is stapled here, and then you get a little wand with a magnet in it, and the bee, who Where is he hiding out? There we go. The bee, little plastic bee here. Now he's red. I did think it was kind of funny that the art on the acetate is 3-color, yellow, green, and brown. And then you've got the red bumblebee. I would have thought they would have gone with like a yellow bee and maybe red for the color of, you know, the houses and stuff, but I can see where it might have looked a little tougher to differentiate when you were looking at this one. So, you know, whatever. Either way, I love the art style, both on the cover and on the game board itself. Speaking of which, let's take a closer look and actually play. All right, so we have this little pen with the magnet, and we're gonna tickle this little bee. Tickle, tickle, tickle. Tickle, tickle, tickle. Tickle, tickle. There we go, and we get him moving around. It's coming up to the cat. Get under the cat. The bed spring there. Now this is getting kind of challenging because now we got to get that. Oh, got to contend with this corner here, and into the doghouse. Okay. So now I got to mark a sting on the scoreboard with this little ball right up here. All right. Tickle, 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 tickle. Come on, little bee. It's harder than it looked. Oh, it's a little tough here. Let's go. Come on. And into the chicken coop. Tickle, 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 tickle. Oh, okay. So he did get me on the other side of that art there, but he clearly hit the plastic, so, or the acetate there. All right. And oh, that was a good one. Okay, there was a solid sting. And let's get him under the bridge. And into the orchard. Tickle, tickle. So you can actually maneuver the bee's backside and steer him a little bit. This is, all right, here we go. Just a little, oh. It takes a little bit of a finesse here, but there you go. And through the barrel, and he's back home. That was cute. I had a good time. What a fun little kids game. It's very simple, but it's perfect for its intended age. So let's take a little bit of a closer look. Oh, here we go. It's a little loud to hold on to because this is just a vacuum formed little maze here. And then there is art printed on this clear acetate. And you'll see it's stapled in with these pretty thick steel staples here, so not even glued on. And actually what I did notice was they do mention in the instructions, should there be a malfunction, like the bee gets wedged into a part of this maze, they encourage you to bend back the staples so you can get underneath and free him, and then bend the staples back into place. So there was actually some thought into why they chose to affix the acetate to the maze using staples instead of glue. Also, glue would have worn out by this time and fallen off. So even though it's a little bit annoying to see, like there's one staple here that drives me nuts. It's right through the word bed and bed spring on part of the maze. For the most part, the rest of them aren't too bad. Yeah, another one in pickle barrel here down at the bottom. But, you know, not a big deal. And I don't think this was a horribly expensive game. But construction is very simple. You have this nice little string here that holds onto the wand. The wand is nice, decent, chunky plastic. However, I've seen some images online of later versions of this game that have a much more substantial wand. And given that you have this little bit of storage space, the way this is designed, it actually fits into the bottom portion of the box. You wouldn't even really need to remove this from the box to play. In fact, I would argue that's probably how it was most frequently played, was just lift the lid on the box and start playing, because this little flap here on the top of the board is perfect for giving you space for the wand to sit in storage. And overall, the footprint of the game is very, very small, which is not something you normally see with a lot of these little kids gimmicky games that usually have like a plastic or toy element to them. And as far as Schaper games go, this is probably the smallest footprint of any of them that I've got. The packaging for Don't Spill the Beans has a lot of empty space, but the nature of that game requires a lot of space to store it just because of how the parts break down. Don't Break the Ice is very similar, even though it has has a folding frame. It's got all these big 3D cubes. Cootie is probably the next smallest one that I've seen, and that's because the game piece is organized very nicely into the box. So kind of interesting to consider that space was still at a premium even back in the 50s, but this game is so much fun. I thought the art was so cute. Just the joy on the front of the box is absolutely infectious. I'm so glad that I got a chance to take a closer look at this game. This is just fantastic. So I guess, have you played Tickle Bee? What did you think? Comment below and let me know. Thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you next time. The weather's warming up and it's time to go fishing with Let's Go Fishin' from Goliath. This is an awesome take on the classic fishing games where the board rotates around and these little fish open their mouths at random. You got to try to catch them real quick before they go by. Now this is cool because Goliath added a whole bunch of different types of sea creatures with a new scoring system. So now each one of these different fish has a point value on their tail. So when you're playing against other players, you now have a reason to go after harder to catch fish, or at least unique fish. This supports up to 4 players. There's 2 speed settings that are controlled. The switch is a crab. It's awesome. I love the little palm tree. The whole thing looks neat. Now this looks more like ocean fishing. You have all these different types of saltwater fish. So I'm excited to get this one out on the table and play. So let's take a look. Okay, this is awesome. Now, I had a game like this when I was younger. These were pretty popular. Mine at the time had bigger fish and fewer of them. This, I believe, has, what, 42 fish? And there's 6 different types. On the bottoms of these little guys, there's a little bit of there's a number right here on the tail, and they each have different values. So as you're playing the game, you have incentive to go after different fish. That adds a whole exciting aspect. Now, the other thing is when I had these little fish games growing up, these were incredibly common. You even see carnivals that use large-scale versions of these. The one that I had, that I recall, the fishing poles had actual strings here from the pole, and then there was a little magnet, and inside each one of the little fish were magnets. Now in this instance, it's just a solid, it looks like a rope, but it's a solid piece of plastic. And there's this little plastic end here that has a couple of, I guess you'd kind of say, barbs. So it's really neat. It actually looks like a neat little wooden fishing pole, but it's so lightweight that you have to really have a steady hand, try to get it into the fish's mouth, and then use the barb to lift the fish up. So it is much more challenging, and I like that aspect of it. I think it's great because having a magnet, you know, when I was a small child, having a magnet, there was some challenge trying to catch the fish because you do have to follow them around the board as they rotate. But again, the magnet would attract really easily, whereas this, you really have to try with a steady hand. I mean, let's just go. This has 2 settings too. This is easy right here. And, oh, yes. Oh. I got a red one and he's worth 2 points. Oh, you don't want that shaking so much. Let's see if I can get a yellow guy here. Oh, I got little groups because this is how they came. But you can, of course, mix them up, which I'm sure they'll get mixed up with play. Oh, it's so hard to tell exactly where they're going to open their mouths. Oh, and I can see they have little teeth. When you look close, inside they have little teeth to catch on the barbs there. Oh, man. All right, I'm targeting just this one. Oh, no. Oh, what's hard like? This is easy. Oh! Okay, come on. Steady hands. Caught my nemesis. It's not a white whale, it's a yellow one. 2 points. I wonder, okay, so they all have point values, but the ones I've all pulled out so far have been 2-pointers. Let's see here. What other color can I go for? We're gonna leave it on hard here. Trying to go for the blue guy. I don't know. That's some sort of like clam or mollusk. No. Come on. Clip, 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 clip. That the sound is great. I mean, yes, the motor is pretty loud, but the clapping of their mouths shut is so great. It sounds like they're marching. Ah, come on. No. Yes. Got a blue one. Let's see. Is a blue one 2 points? 2 point. What's the point of the point system? So, all right. I don't know. Are we going left to right, right to left? That's all right. Two points each for primary colors. Let's see teal. Now that is definitely a clam. Oh, I lucked out. That was 1 point. Okay, so the teal clam, he's not worth a whole lot. Kind of green there, greenish. Not as bright green as some of these others. This one looks like a puffer fish. Oh, okay, hold on. No. Go for that. Oh, I should have stayed with. Okay. Oh. All right. And what are we worth? 3 points. 3 points. There we go. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Adding it to the score. This is, I gotta say, this is a very nice way to spend an afternoon. All right. Let's straighten out the line here. Yeah, I could get used to this. Come on. There it is. There we go. That is a 3-pointer. I thought I already caught him. I caught the clam earlier. I caught this fella. This is our guy here, the blowfish. There we go. The clam doesn't have eyes. No. Okay, and this is true green here. This is green. Okay. There we go. Got a little bit of a rainbow here, going from green to teal to blue. I got violet in there. Oh, let's see here. I haven't caught orange. Yet. That's a guy right there. How much is orange worth? Orange, let me see there. 1 point. Orange, that's a 1-pointer there. That's nice. There, get a good picture. There we go. Get one of these. There we go. Put that on a dating profile. That'll find you some matches on Plenty of Fish. I'll tell you what. Okay. There we go. That's another good one. Nice red one there. Worth only 1. Not so great, eh, fellas? You know, it's a good-looking fish, but not giving me many points there. This is Goliath, and of course, many of you know Megazord there. They're just, they're joining me today for a little afternoon fishing excursion. I just wanted to try out the multiplayer here. There is some... I'm glad this is jumbo, because if you're trying to follow around the board, you know, there we go. Oh, feels good. Feels real good. Three-pointer there. Three-pointer. This is nice. Of course, it's not even about the score. Sorry there, Goliath. There. It's just about enjoying the time with your friends. It doesn't get much more peaceful than this. This is nice. So then they ask him, why are you dragging this chain all over town? And he goes, you ever try to push one? So then the customs agent, she's checking the passports, right? And it says Ole Olsen and Lena Olsen. And she looks at the two of them and she says, any relation? And Lena blushes and she says, ja, once he couldn't wait. That's the best honeymoon joke I know. So what happens to this Norwegian after he loses a $50 bet on the game? He loses another $50 on the instant replay. Who's the most famous Norwegian inventor? Henry Fjord. So then the Norwegian one says, hey, don't worry, I've got a compass. And he pulls out a compact. And the Swede, he goes, that's a compact, it's just a mirror. And the Norwegian says, yeah, it always shows you who's lost. Where we got, oh, bringing in another one. That's a beaut. Three-pointer right there. See, or you can mix vodka and milk of magnesia, and they call that a Phillips screwdriver, eh? Ah, that's a beaut right there. That's a beaut. Nice two-pointer. Adding to that beautiful array. It's not always about how many you catch. Sometimes it's just about the experience. Am I right? Oh, no, I'm not out of jokes. Hold on a second. I got more. Okay, so let's see here. Why don't they allow Norwegians to swim in Lake Superior? Because they leave a ring. Oh. Sorry, guys. Sorry. Hey, yeah, how's it going? Yeah, no, just out fishing. Megazord, Goliath, yeah. Yeah, classic. Yeah, oh no. You know, I can take care of that when I get back, but that was kind of a loud one there, and I think I'm scaring away all the fish. You guys are getting a little tense, you know, can we? Yeah, okay, yeah, tell your folks I said hi, okay. Carl says hi, fellas. Oh man, that was so much fun. I'm sorry if I was a bit obnoxious. As a Midwesterner and being in vacation mode, I maybe had a little too much pop and started getting a little too rowdy with my friends. But hey, isn't that the point of gaming? I actually think that Let's Go Fishin XL is a lot of fun and great for all ages. I mean, even as an adult, I could totally see pulling this out and having a good time with my friends because it's just enough of a challenge to keep you into it, while at the same time being an excellent social game where you can just chill out, chat, have a good time. So, I mean, it's nothing original. We've seen fishing games like this all the time. Like I said, I had one when I was a kid that had magnets, but I think this version is really excellent. You have the 2 speeds, so you have nice difficulty settings, and there's plenty of a difference between the two of them. I also liked the little barbed hooks that the fishing poles had instead of using magnets, and the point system. Now, I wasn't sure if, when we got started, if each fish had its own point value or if it was based on the colors. And as we saw, it was actually each individual fish had its own value, which added some extra challenge. You basically have a little bit of blind luck in there, and having that point system makes the competition a whole lot of fun. So I gotta ask, have you ever played a fishing game like this? Have you played Let's Go Fishing XL? Comment below, let me know. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you next time.